Walking Dead's comic, like the show, is a series of highs and lows. Let's get into it.
Find it hard to see the light in the kingdom I behold. See him in the morning, see him in the night, see him in the morning, see the devil in my life. Kingdom I behold.
This whole thing started because of stinking Last of Us. This whole thing started because I didn't want to watch the Last of Us show. I just wanted, you know what? I'll just watch Walking Dead. Let's watch that. And I read the comic, and now we're here. That's we're here. All because of a stinking TV show. All right, I'll just
all because of
yeah.
So resident Walking Dead lover here, Marshall. We're going to be talking about The Walking Dead, story of how one cop from small town Georgia became the leader of the post-apocalyptic civilization, and how it kind of started to suck ass at the end.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah. So, anyways, about the man behind the comic, Robert Kirkman. Much like me, he loves zombies. He watched all of like the Romero trilogy, as I have. He watched Zombie 1979 like I have, and he liked RE like I did. And he loved zombie media so much that he wanted to create his own comic. So he went to a couple comics, and none of them wanted to do it. He went to Image Comics and he wanted to like put forward something where it was like a comic book that takes place after Night of the Living Dead. But a friend convinced him because that would be easier for him to control. The studio themselves, Image Comics, they said that they wanted something with aliens in it. So he just said that it's an alien invasion story and that the zombies are part of the invasion plan. And then he just never followed up on that in the comics. And that's how he got his big thing out there. Started out with illustrations by Tony Moore. It's pretty good illustrations, I might add. There's some pretty good fucking shit in there, like when Amy gets bit. But that's probably for later. But it was later replaced by the Charlie Adler, which most people will probably recognize if they read the comics. Also, it canonically begins in 2003, which is pretty close date to me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's kind of interesting thing I like about like both art styles are very different. Like I do like I don't know if cartoon is the right word, but it's very like stylized. At the start, like the original artist, like it's just kind of funny, like when you look at like I'm not getting sidetracked, but it's just a comparison that like Telltale's like art style actually lends itself to that original like design, that original like art style of the comic than it does like the later designs, especially since like that Telltale's Walking Dead series actually takes place in the comic book universe. So,
yeah, I love it.
Yeah, that's kind of the interesting thing in regards to it. But like I do really like the iconic like look and style of the later issues, and like how the black and white actually fits, oddly enough, especially since Kirkland was clearly going for that Romero type like tone and feel to it. Like it actually like works pretty well. And even though I have read the what was it, the special editions, the deluxe editions that they like recolored it, the black and white actually like kind of works better in a way. Not to say the color edition is actually like bad. It's just like the black and white style like actually fits kind of better in a way. if that makes sense.
Yeah, something I have a bit of a problem with the later art style is that sometimes you get kind of same face stuff. Like there will be panels in the prison arc where Dale and Herschel Green will look the same.
Oh, yeah, I see what you mean.
But I also do have a lot of love for the later style. I also imagine it's like a lot of coloring because you don't have to color it in.
Hmm. Yeah, I kind of. You're not wrong in regards to the same face stuff though. Like, especially during the prison arc, and the other characters would like, especially female characters would sometimes look alike. So sometimes you'll look at like, let's say Holly, but it's not Holly; it's some other character. Sometimes the hair gives it away. Sometimes like a different eye shapings, etc., etc. Which is kind of
Holly's from Alexandria.
yeah, like I'm just saying example, you know what I mean? Because that has happened once where I was like, "Oh wait, is that Holly or is that somebody else?" Like I remember like reading at one point and actually getting confused with whose character was what, but like I definitely like got used to it like over time though.
What do you think about the beginning? You know, Atlanta and all that.
I think Atlanta's pretty strong. I'm not gonna lie. Like even though like fuck, when did 28 Days Later come out? Like it is
2002 or
yeah,
2002, 2001 of those. I forget which.
like early 2000s. So like as much as I like it, and Walking Dead's like Rick waking up in a hospital after a coma is pretty much like the iconic scene, and not obviously talking about the show, but we're not going to talk about that, or at least not much here. But it is like worked his way up to being one of the more iconic like openings, like in both the show and the comic. And even though part of me does kind of roll my eyes a little bit, and I don't know if Kirkland actually like saw 28 Days Later, which he probably did, which he more likely has. He's a big zombie nerd, and like either try to pay like homage to that opening, or maybe like took inspiration from it or something like that, because they're kind of similar. Like man like ends up in a coma, wakes up in a hospital, sees the world has gone to shit, and has to deal with it, and he doesn't know like how to cope with it at first. It's kind of like similar in both regards, both dealing with zombies, albeit the zombies are different. Like they're very similar in some aspects.
Yeah, well, I believe 100% he took it from 28 Days Later because A, 28 Days Later was a big movie, and two, you know, Kirkman's a zombie fan, so he would have seen it.
Hmm.
I like the beginning arc. I love the art style by Tony Moore. It's got some pretty good moments. You know, Amy getting bit, as mentioned earlier. It's strong opening. You know, when Rick gets out of the hospital and goes back to his town, and he meets Morgan and Dwayne, and he helps them out. That's a great way of characterizing him and showing the kind of man he's going to be, at least most of the time. It also introduces, you know, a lot of legacy characters like Glenn and Andrea and Dale. And this is something that I personally see. It does show an early sign of a problem that The Walking Dead has with giving characters unsatisfying ends.
Yeah, I kind of agree with you in that regard. Yeah, like there's some aspects with like Kirkland's writing that are really strong. I do think like the dude's not a bad writer; he's a really good writer. It's just that it's like there are some like points he makes or some decisions he makes that do kind of screw him over down the line. And it doesn't help that even he has said, like, I do believe he did regret cutting Rick's arm off as an example back in the prison arc, because he knew it kind of limited him. Even though I think my issue with that, I don't think it's used as well as it could have been later on, but I guess we can get to that when we get to that.
Characters in fights with them after that happens, they act like they have the superior fighting advantage because they have both their hands. But what they don't realize is like the mechanics of punching is basically trying to put two knuckles behind like your arm, and he's just kind of left out that limiter, so he could literally just stump punch people, and they never bring that up.
Mm.
But it did give him that iconic left hook that he uses on so many people.
Yeah.
Mostly his friends.
Yeah.
Yeah. Atlanta, the Atlanta arc, it does. I mentioned earlier how it is where we see the unsatisfying stuff pop up first. I think that Shane's death was unsatisfying. I believe that Rick should have been the one to kill him and not Carl.
I mean, like, I kind of get what you mean. Um, I do think, like, the scene afterwards I thought was pretty good, where like Rick and Carl actually hug out and they actually have like a little heart to heart, because when Carl says it's like it's different killing the person who's alive as opposed to like a walker. Like, I thought that was good. And I guess not to, like, I guess we can try not to make comparisons too much, but I think the show kind of did it I kind of get what you mean, like, after watching the show, because being a fan of both, like, the scene in the show kind of, in a way, is a little bit better, because, like, Rick trying to take control of the situation and then having to put his friend down, and him actually screaming at the top of his lung, "This was you, not me. Like, you did this. I didn't do this. You did this." That's actually a good scene, and it's kind of funny, like, going back to the comic after that, and being reminded, oh yeah, that's right, Carl killed him, not Rick. And
Yeah, it's well, you can't really fault him for not doing something that someone came up with 7 years later.
yeah.
But yeah. Anyways, you want to go on to the next arc, or do you have some things to say about Atlanta?
I mean, not too much. Like, I thought Atlanta, honestly, is a good, like, it's a strong arc, honestly. Like I said, like, it's the beginning of, like, Walking Dead is a pretty, like, strong opener of the series. Granted, it's not, like, this isn't me saying it's bad. It's not the best arc. Obviously, the prison arc that happens, like, later, that arguably is, like, my favorite arc of the series, and possibly might be the best arc of the comic itself. And we might get to that when we get to that. But, like,
It's
Atlanta,
the longest arc.
it is. Yeah, it is. Like, stretching, like, how many volumes? Like 10 volumes?
Let me check. Chapter 3, Chapter 4, Chapter 5, Chapter 6, Chapter 7, Chapter 8. And it's, yeah, just Chapter 3 to Chapter 8. That's 5 chapters.
But yeah, like, it's a strong opening. Like, it's a good way of getting you, like, into the world.
I also, because Winter Nomad arc, it has some pretty good moments. For one, Rick cancels Christmas officially. There's a panel of it where he's talking to Dale. That's pretty fun. But on a more serious note, when he makes that decision to pack up and leave Atlanta and basically start the journey, that shows like the very first decision he made as leader for the group, which leads to some basically everything that happens afterwards.
Mm-hmm.
This is where they meet Tyrese, his daughter, and her boyfriend. It's where we learn about Lori's pregnancy, where Wiltshire Estates happens, and that leads to a lot of things happening to Alan, then Alan's kids, and by extension, the rest of the group. It leads to Carol and Tyrese getting together, which leads to one of the more bullshit deaths of the comic. It leads to, Carl getting shot, and Glenn finding Maggie, the Walker barn, and Herschel realizing that he's an idiot. It's a lot of stuff that happens there. I'd hate for us to skip it.
Yeah. I do think the Winter Nomad arc is a good, like, in between, like, arc, like, if that makes sense, lead up to what is essentially, like, a major, like, story note, like, in the series. And it does, like, set up the pieces of what's gonna come later, especially when it comes to going through characters like Julie and Chris, and what they were gonna do later in the prison arc, and also, like, showing us other characters and, like, setting those things up, and we were actually gonna, like, see how things were gonna, like, pay off in a way, if that makes sense.
Uh, Something about the prison arc that I don't like is a lot of melodrama happens,
Yeah.
which kind of hurts it in my opinion. Like Michonne and Tyrese, where she's just a homewrecker, which is a recurring trait for some for some reason.
Yeah.
And her being a homewrecker leads to Carol killing herself with a walker that they brought into the prison for plot reason.
Yeah.
But we can get to that later. Uh, Starting with the prison arc, the clearing was actually a pretty cool scene. Seeing that Tyrese is shit with guns, and that Andrea is really good with guns. Characterizing them for what they become in the series, or at least the prison arc for Tyrese, because he didn't make it out. There's also Herschel and co getting invited. What'd you think of that?
Oh yeah. I thought like now this is like the third or fourth time that I've like read this series in full. In retrospect, I do kind of like Herschel and co getting invited. It definitely like leads up to one of the bigger like holy shit moments in the prison arc. We'll get to that when we get to that, but like, and some people don't like that moment, some people do. I for one do. It's honestly a bit of a consistency with the world, showing that this is a tough world, this is a dark world, like everything's gone to shit and no one's really safe in a way, which was kind of established early on. So I do think like Herschel and co getting invited and then leading up to that moment, I do think I actually like that. I do. Yeah, I think Herschel getting invited and like them and co leading up to that moment in particular, I do think is actually a good moment. I do think is a good like story decision, I guess, writing wise. I do think like because like how Herschel's daughter actually get killed after like someone what was it, Thomas, who got in for tax evasion, quote unquote, like
Yeah.
when he's actually a violent criminal, like leading up to that holy shit moment where Herschel walks in, which is a holy shit moment for me. I remember being really shocked when I first saw that because of how dark it was, but it is consistent with the world, and it's to remind you that no one's safe. Two, this is a dark world. This is a dark universe, especially since there's a bunch of other dark shit that happens in the prison arc. It honestly, like, do you think it's the darkest arc in the comic?
Uh, Maybe. I don't know. I'd have to think about all the arcs at once, and I don't know if I can have all that information in the front of my mind at once.
Right, that makes sense. Like you have to like look at it on a tally board. You have Herschel's daughter get beheaded. You see their headless corpses and their heads just on the side, and you see them reanimate.
And then they reanimate.
They reanimate, which is even double fucked up. You have Michonne getting captured and raped repeatedly, one time in front of Glenn. You have Rick getting his arm cut off. You have Lori's pregnancy her getting blasted by a sniper blast, and her falling over Judith and crushing and killing Judith, her newborn baby. And Rick has to see that, and he has to keep running.
Yeah.
The governor,
But
what Michonne does to the governor is also pretty fucked up.
yeah, that's something where it's only acceptable because the governor is just a fucking cartoon villain.
I don't know if he's like cartoon over the top evil. I would definitely say like the dude is a piece of shit in the comic.
Yeah. Like I remember when he got introduced and I was writing notes, I had like just 5 consecutive bullet points about just all the shitty stuff he does and how it's super duper edgy.
I don't know if I would say edgy though.
Huh?
I don't know. I mean, I don't know if I would say it's like super edgy, but I kind of get what you mean. I've read your notes, but like, I don't know. Like,
I mean, there's edgy, and then there's tearing the teeth out of your zombie daughter's mouth so that you can molest her easier.
Yeah. Come get your daddy a kiss. And actually turned out that he's not her daddy at all. He's actually her uncle. Like, what the fuck?
Rapey Uncle Philip.
Rapey Uncle Philip. Ugh. Like, what is that? That's like two. What is that? All in one? That's incest, pedophilia, and necrophilia.
Necrophilia.
All in one. That's disgusting. That's nasty.
And that's like on top of him cutting off Rick's hand, swearing up a storm, and raping Michonne.
Yeah. Yeah.
At least his death scene is fucking killer. I love it.
Getting his head blown off.
Yeah, and then eaten by the Horde.
Yep.
I can just imagine that in motion. I wish we got that in the show.
Oh yeah.
Oh, the show's death was still pretty killer.
Oh yeah.
More on the topic of let's get on some better topics pertaining to the prison arc. There's the marriage between Glenn and Maggie, which is like one of the only moments of peace that anyone in this series gets. Back onto dark topics. One that I really love is the fight between Tyrese and Rick. Like where they beat the living shit out of each other and Rick falls off the second story. I think it's a very cool moment, and it's a very good character moment for the both of them. Mm-hmm. And it's one of the things that makes me feel like Tyrese got wasted potential. Like I feel like he could have made it to almost Negan's arc.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I kind of agree with you there. Like Tyrese actually has pretty good potential. Especially Carol, which we might get to in a bit. But, like, that's kind of the issue when you have this veil of, like, no one is safe type writing, if you know what I mean, where...
Yes, the George R.R. Martin school of writing, where if you're stuck, you kill a character.
Yeah, there are ways you can make that work, where a character's decision and he makes the wrong call or makes a dumb decision and that ends up getting them killed. That's one thing. But there are some times where a character living would actually improve the story a bit more. Like, it is fun, and this is kind of different, but it is fun to speculate what if Shane lived and see how different the story would have been and how him and Rick would have interacted, especially how Rick changes throughout the narrative. Like, that's just
kind of like sorry to interrupt you.
It's fine.
And to bring in the show, but it's kind of like season 9 of the show, dating, and he has that talk with Shane.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
More than just speculation, I feel like Tyrese legitimately should have lived until like war broke out or something, because he was a very important character. He was one of the major ones. He had a good relationship with Rick. I believe that he could have had something like, bring back the show again. That scene during the summer nomad arc in the show where Rick kills the Claimers and he tells Daryl, "You're my brother." I feel like that should have been something he did with Tyrese in the comic books, because they have a very rich history and they've done and seen a lot of shit together.
Yeah.
And he just, he gets his head lopped off because, Governor, bad man.
Mm.
And I feel like they could have still had that scene if it was like someone else. Like, I don't know if you remember him because he wasn't a very major character, but Billy, Herschel's son, who's like trying to grow out the stubble. In the books, he doesn't do much. He tries to grow out the stubble to appear more manly. He wants to pair off with the chick because everyone's doing it, and he wants to be with someone. I feel like there could have been an arc where he tries to prove himself as a man, and he goes off with Michonne to go kill some of the governor's men, and he's the one who gets captured. And it could have, instead of making Herschel a depressed little shit when the governor comes bursting down the door, it could have made him more like his violent self when he tried to pull a gun on Rick, but righteous.
Yeah, that's actually not that bad of an idea, honestly. I, honest to God, legit forgot about Billy. Like, that's how like much in the background he actually is, I guess, in a way. Despite being Herschel's son, it's like, oh yeah, he exists.
I don't know this for sure, but I think during the winter nomad arc at the farm, I don't believe they ever show him on screen. He's just like inside the house. I imagine him just looking outside the window with like a slushie and a box of popcorn as they open up the barn, and his fucking brother gets eaten.
Okay.
Anyways, you want to talk about the war at the prison and how it falls and stuff?
Oh yeah. Unless you want to talk about the governor some more, and then lead up to the war.
Oh yeah, I'd like to take some time to shit on the governor. So when he's introduced, he appears pretty friendly. He shows them around his community, shows them the fighting pit, which is, I'm not gonna lie, I'd probably watch that. I've seen Live Leak and I wasn't really phased. I'd probably watch people fight in a zombie pit in the apocalypse. Then he takes them to a back room and tells them, they ask him, what are you feeding the walkers? He says, well, stranger, we feed the walkers strangers. That was a pretty good fucking scene, I'm not gonna lie. If they stuck with that sort of creepy characterization instead of, the sadistic swear up a storm jackass characterization that he got, I feel like I could have liked him a lot more. The fish tanks with the walker heads is pretty cool. I feel like that also could have, fit with the characterization I would have liked him to have. There's his walker daughter. I believe the show actually handled the walker daughter in a pretty cool way, where he's trying to hold on to, some semblance of the past and try not to accept that his daughter's dead. That could have been pretty cool for if Kirkman played it right, but no, he's just creepy Uncle Phil. Also, a more serious thing, the governor, he's the leader of Woodbury, but you don't really see him act like a leader. You see him boss people around, but you never see him tell specific people, you go do this, or you never see him help around the community, which I guess he isn't that kind of guy, but it's a lot harder to believe that he leads his people. Negan, he does have scenes where that happens sometimes, although he's not very, very good at it, as he usually just boils it down to shoot that motherfucker.
Yeah, ditto. Ditto. Yeah, I was actually gonna bring up Negan in comparison. In a way, you're not wrong though. Even though I actually I like the governor as a villain in the comic. I do think some aspects of him could be toned down in a way, if that makes sense, where you have this sadistic, psychotic person leading these group of people, and our group of survivors has to deal with them. Had you toned down a few things, I do think it could have worked a little bit better, but in a way yeah, go ahead.
He could have been a Jamestown type figure, since he had charisma, as you could see from some of the scenes during his flashback arc. Speaking of his flashback arc, I'm pretty sure you saw this in my notes. There is one thing that Kirkman does with it that's really cool, is that his flashback arc obviously takes place over the course of a couple months as he's, recovering and trying to find the prison. There is this cool parallel where he's trying to fire his gun with his non-dominant hand since he's been disabled, and he basically just sort of gives up on it because it's too hard, which contrasts with Rick having to learn how to use his non-dominant hand after he breaks it on the child murderer's face. And he sticks with it, and he eventually becomes good with it. It's a very great contrast to see who's the better leader.
But yeah, I do think just the government just need a few tweaks here and there, and he would stand out. I won't say he already stands out, he's already a notable villain, but I think that's mostly due to the show. And also even though he does do some things in the comic that actually does affect the comic going forward, cutting off Rick's hand is a major example, but some aspects of him can be seen as a little too try hard. even though this may make me sound like an edgelord. Like, remove the molester aspect. You can either just make it so that he's trying to hold on to his daughter in a way, but actually hint that he's just mentally ill, or if Kirkland actually wanted to, and I do think he was close to this, he just needed to remove a few things back a bit. I was okay with him like raping Michonne because I thought that like again, it ties into this is a dark world, this is a dark like universe, like bad shit happens to characters, and the governor being an example, and also like Thomas, I believe, being examples of like how like the apocalypse brought out like the worst in humanity. I thought that was actually done like well enough, at least to me, and like the look of Glenn's face, and I didn't think like Kirkman was like being too try hard with that scene, because like the look of Glenn's face, because you could just see he's just crying and panicking, he's just actually like upset with himself because he can't do anything in that situation, despite like witnessing a terrible event. So
I do see your point. It's kind of like a thing, like 40K, where if you have like one or two bad things for a character, they're still, you can still believe them or like them or whatever. But if you just like pile on thing after thing, it gets kind of ridiculous and you can't take it seriously.
Again, I guess I guess you're not really wrong on that aspect, though. I just think that Kirkland may have tried to like reel things back a tad, but like or at least it's down to like tone and down how things are written, though. And this might be a bit of a side tangent here, but Governor's design, I don't know if that actually helps it. I think that probably kind of adds on to the whole like edgy aspect, if that makes sense. If that makes sense, where like he has that like bell mustache and like long hair, and he's like,
Yeah.
dude looks like he's on a sex offender registry.
He looks like a sleazebag. He looks like he works in some 80s VHS store in the back selling the illegal VHS tapes.
Like straight up like selling child porn and shit.
Yeah. Anyways, the war at the prison. What'd you think of it?
Okay. Third aspect, I really like it. I think it's really cool. There are some aspects of it, I do kind of look back on and saying, ooh, that's kind of a waste opportunity, and that's something the show kind of did better. Now, what I mean by that is, like, before I get to that, I do think, like, the whole war and the fight and the back and forth I thought was really good. And I thought it was really well done, especially, like, the horde aspect playing a role. Now, the aspect that I think that actually the show kind of did better was Judith. I think Judith being alive and Rick raising her actually is a little bit better than just Lori getting shot, falling, and killing and crushing Judith in the process. Because Kirkland, ironically enough, tried to kill her a few times in the show, but failed.
Yeah, I know. I remember there was one specific scene during the war in the prison where they come across a bloody baby carrier, and like Rick and Carl just fucking ball their eyes out, and it's some amazing acting from the actors.
Oh yeah.
I like the war in the show better as well because of I just don't like that Tyrese died the way he did. I don't think the governor should have killed him. Billy and all that. I also like the scene at the beginning where Rick's trying to coerce the governor away, and he's like making Herschel proud, and then Herschel gets fucking his head cut off, and it's great. There's so many things about that, like the fight between Rick and the governor. I wish that was in the comics because it's so cool just watching two leaders beat the living shit out of each other.
Oh yeah.
And his sadness at Judith's supposed death, while he's like all bloodied and beat up and can't speak properly, that's so much more hard hitting than Rick having teary eyes for literally like one panel and telling Carl to not look, because I don't know if anyone else notices, but he doesn't like have tears stains or whatever after that. It's just that one panel. To be fair, that one panel does go hard as fuck, but it would go much harder if, you know, was affected beyond that one panel.
Yeah. I guess kind of to get back, and also going to mention another point in the prison arc that we kind of skimmed over, but like the one thing I like that the show did in regards to Judith is that Judith isn't Rick's, she's Shane's, and I like how like that is an aspect that Rick actually talks to Michonne in, what was it, like season 7 or season 8, I forgot which, and he's like I know Judith is not mine, but I'm gonna raise her as my daughter anyway, which I like. And that is kind of a wasted opportunity like in the comic though. Like I get Kirkman's like this is a tough world, I get that, but I do think Judith being raised by Rick I think is actually a little bit stronger. Lori can still die, I'm okay with that. It's just I think with Judith's death, I think that was kind of a wasted opportunity that the show actually does a good job with.
The thing with stuff like Judith's death and Carol's death and Tyrese's death, it's something that a lot of these tough world type writers like George R. R. Martin and Robert Kirkman don't seem to understand is character possibility should always outweigh, you know, this is a tough world, guy, people die. It should always outweigh that. Because if you live by that mantra, you waste so much shit. Like, a prime example being, you know, Game of Thrones. It had a lot of character deaths and all for nothing, and people fucking hated it.
I mean, that depends on the writer. It depends. Like, Grimdark, as a genre in general, is known for having, like, not only heavy subject matter, but also, like, heavy, like nihilistic plot points, dark characters' decisions, characters having, like, poor morality, like that type of stuff. But it's down to how you write it, honestly. Like I guess we're kind of getting on this tangent. I'm a massive fan of Joe Abercrombie. I've talked about his books a few times. At some point I might talk about him on the channel, but like he's one of the better Grimdark writers in my opinion, because one, even though like a few of the characters aren't really good people, at most they're anti-heroes. One character who's my favorite, like, in the entire series is Glocka, and he is, like, the dude is probably, like, one of the worst characters in the book, like, morale-wise. The dude has no problem torturing people, has no problem, like, making qualms about it. Dude's kind of, like, Glocka's, like, bitter, he's hateful, but there's great moments of dialogue with him. He has a really good backstory, and there is a reason why he's like that. But his personality is why he's like alluring, is why he's like so, like, yeah, his personality is why he's likable. So it's, again, you're not wrong. It's down to writing, and I do think Kirkland just, again, I think he just needed to, like, to peel back a bit, you know? He just needed to peel back with that, because like death is kind of sacred in a way in storytelling, so you need to be careful with that. There are times where it can work, there are times where you're just doing it for sake of shock value, so it's like you need to have that middle point. Sometimes Walking Dead has that middle point, sometimes it really doesn't, and you see wasted opportunities. And it doesn't help that the show honestly did a few things a tad better. Like, even though Tyrese does die in the show, I do like him in that. Carol is also another big one that I actually wanted to get to, and I might as well talk about it here. Like, Carol committing suicide, and I think, to another point, like, Wendigoon did a good job actually making that comparison in his Iceberg video, where Like, Carol in the comic was someone who couldn't live with the world, while Carol in the show was someone who was just a regular housewife who later became who changed as the story progressed, and actually, like, oh god, knew and learned how to grow with it and learn how to adapt with it. And so when you get to like season, what was it, Terminus, that was season 5, and she actually ends up helping the group, she actually ends up being, like, at that point, a fan favorite. So it's like,
yeah, look what she did with a bottle rocket and a bullet.
Exactly, like it's that moment right there, is that seeing that progression. So even though like Carol in the comic, I can see what Kirkland was trying to do, was trying to make a tragic element with her. In like, after seeing the show, you just can't help but go, ooh, that's kind of a wasted opportunity in a way, if that makes. But like TLD, yeah, it's like it's a wasted opportunity, like in that retrospective aspect, you know what I mean? Which is possibly that
it's like the difference between Grimdark and Grim. You know that, like, right? Grimdark is like have you ever seen Sin City?
Yeah.
Like, there's many characters in it. Like the cop guy, his arc is him being able to make sure the girl is safe before he dies. He dies, it's grim, it's dark, but you know, his arc completed, his story was good, and it's acceptable. Grim Derp is having a group bring a walker into their community, not taking out its teeth, not removing its arms, just leaving it there, basically chained up by the neck, when they have someone who's actively acting weird in a way that even a year into an apocalypse, they can make out is like, hey, something's wrong with this person. What series of events leads to someone allowing that to happen in their story? It's not good writing.
Yeah.
There's even an example of good Grimdark in the show, or in the book, where when they get to Alexandria and Rick meets Jesse and the walkers break in, she can't handle it and her son can't handle it, and they're like getting eaten, and she won't let go of Carl, so Rick cuts off her hand and leaves her to die. That's some good Grimdark that's in the books. Why couldn't they have done something like that for Carol if he wanted her dead so bad? I'm guessing he didn't want her dead so bad. He just wants some melodrama.
Yeah. This person likes this person. This person wants to sleep with this person. Carol tried to sleep with Rick and sleep with Lori for some reason. And try to make a polygamous relationship.
You know, fidelity isn't the only melodrama. There's one, Otis is made racist for like one scene. Before that scene, he's a very helpful character. He's like sorry that he shot Carl. He helps around with the prison and the farm. After that scene, people just kind of regard him as you know, this standoffish ass, despite him only being racist once and confiding it to one character that no one else in the group really likes. And then he dies. He's like the one casualty when walkers enter the prison while Rick and co are gone. That was his entire purpose. He could have died during the war, and it would have been better.
Got any more points in regards to? Got any more points in regards to prison? Do you want to move on to Summer Nomad or?
Rick's hand. What do you think about it? I can't quite remember what you thought about it.
Oh yeah, that's right. I'm kind of 50-50 on it. Like, I like it. I don't think it's utilized as well as it could have been. If that makes sense. Like it's pointed out a few times by characters. And Kirkland did say he regretted it, which is interesting. I think my big issue with it is that for some reason it wasn't up until after All Out War, Rick finally gets like a prosthetic, I think, like that little hook he has. It is kind of weird that it took like that long for Rick to get that, though. You know, if you know what I mean. He should have
just duct taped a knife to his stump.
Yeah, like what like what Merle did in the show. Like, that actually would have been at least a bit interesting. It would have been useful. At least his other hand would have been useful against like walkers or even like other people, instead of just like having just this one stump just around, just being useless. Like, Like
I
yeah, go ahead.
I do what it does as a scene because it does establish that the governor's a real threat because he outright mutilates the protagonist. That's some pretty ballsy shit. I do wish they did more with it though.
Yeah, like I guess like my big issue with that is that Rick didn't do much to make out of the situation, I guess, if that makes sense.
Another thing with the prison arc is Martinez. Do you remember Martinez? He was the guy who worked with the governor who had the do rag. He
Oh,
escaped
right.
with Rick's group
That's
under the
right.
governor's order to leave and tell the governor where the prison is, and it represents like a very big change in his character that I think came up again during Alexandria, where he realized that he's only doing what he is to protect Carl and Lori, but after the prison arc, it's just Carl.
Mhm.
Uh, where he says that he's talking to Lori. You can find the panel somewhere, and he says that he like mentally ranks everyone around him by how useful they are to him and how willing he would be to kill them to like protect his family. And basically, everyone that isn't his family is fair game if they get in the way. And that comes up later with Jesse when the walkers get into Alexandria. He literally lops off her hand as she's holding on to Carl to get him to safety. And that's the Rick that was in my personal favorite arc, the Summer Nomad arc. If you want to get onto that.
Yeah, sure.
So first off, in this arc, Dale kind of becomes a bit of an ass. For a long time in the books, he's the voice of reason and caution. In this, he's got one leg. He kind of exposed himself to have some cuckold tendencies back in the prison. He's not feeling too good, and he's kind of just an ass for a lot of scenes. He makes it up on his deathbed, but yeah, that was kind of annoying to deal with. What'd you think of that?
Like now this is like after the prison arc. Now, one of the I don't know if this is Summer Nomad specifically, but like I know one of the iconic like scenes in it is the what was it like it was the Claimers in the show, but they were called a different name in the comic. But
Oh,
like
they didn't even have a name. They were just fucking moonshine hillbillies because
yeah,
that's what they look like.
What the hell are you gonna do now, sport? He's mine. Please.
yeah, they were just a bunch of like moonshine like rednecks. Damn it. But like when like the dude like held up Rick and he said, "What are you gonna do now?" and he's like just holding on to him, Rick just bites into his neck and rips a chunk of his throat out, scaring the other dude who was about to rape Carl. Dude like drops Carl and Rick just shanks and shivs like the dude just right in front of him. And in the comic, it's Abraham that's holding Carl, and just him just looking at Rick just butchering the dude. Like it's a great scene, and the issue afterwards I really like, especially rereading it recently. Like going into like the cost and like losing yourself in this world. Like Rick even like mentioning like how far are you willing to go to protect the ones you love, and like are you even human at that point? Like kind of like another zombie thing, like what Joel tells Ellie. You keep finding a reason to keep finding something to fight for, basically.
I struggled for a long time with surviving. And you, no matter what, you keep finding something to fight for.
And that's something I think was done like it really well, especially the heart to heart that Rick and Carl actually have, where Carl actually tells his dad that like there are some dark thoughts that even he has, and even he like enjoyed like seeing Rick kill the dude. Granted, he had a good reason to, obviously, but and seeing them like
remember, it's always okay to gut a rapist.
child rapist.
Yes.
But yeah, like the heart to heart they have, I thought was really good. Like especially Abraham talking about his family, also like I thought was really good too.
That was fucking brutal.
Like yeah, like woof.
The way he doesn't really describe it, and he says, "I did things to those men." That's fucking hardcore.
That's enough. That's enough to tell you like, oh, he did something. Like he did some shit.
Yeah. Something I didn't put in my notes, but I wanted to mention was about Abraham. It's not really anything plot specific. He just gets this face when he's about to murder people that I find absolutely hilarious. You see it when Maggie hangs herself and isn't coming back to, and when Ethan gets bit in Alexandria and Abraham puts him down. You also see it when he's having sex with Holly, although he doesn't, fucking RKO her or anything. It's just funny. Anyways,
I actually liked Abraham quite a lot. Actually, not gonna lie. Like both show and comic, I actually think he's really a good character, good supporting character. Like to be honest, a lot of great moments from him. Like he has some pretty good like dialogue. So like he's definitely one of the more like standout like side characters, if that makes sense, in the group.
Yeah, I have a weird thing about him in the comics is, I like to think of what would have been different in like my perfect version of The Walking Dead. And in a lot of the scenes with him, I kind of just replaced him with Tyrese because I feel like if Tyrese survived, he would have filled a lot of the roles that Abraham does. Because, they're both the strong men of the group when they arrive. And I can't really find a place for him. He's a great character. It's just, if The Walking Dead was better, I don't think he would be in it, even though I do love him.
Mm.
Something about Abraham that happens later on in the Alexandria arc is more of that infidelity melodrama that happens. Rosita, him, and Holly, what'd you think about their infidelity melodrama?
I'm kind of 50-50. Like melodrama depends on how you write it. Sometimes it can work, sometimes it can't. Here, there are aspects like, and I'm not saying like that melodrama specifically. Like there are some aspects in the melodrama in Walking Dead that I do think works. Like a big example and the biggest thing is Rick, Lori, and Shane. That's the big one. Like
another big one is Dale and his insecurities in the comics. He's insecure about being an old man and having one leg and all that, and thinks that Andrea doesn't really love him. It creates some good melodrama, not Michelle being a homewrecker who sleeps with every black male character, or at least tries to. Heath turns her down.
Yeah, but like the stuff with like what was it, like Holly, like Holly and such, like that I do think kind of took away a bit from the narrative in a way. I do think sometimes some of the melodrama in the series can get a little too much in the forefront. Granted, that's not always the case, but that right there I think is a good example of it being like kind of unnecessary in a way, if that makes sense. Though I'm not saying like all the melodrama like in the series is bad. Like obviously Rick, Shane, Lori, like that's the big one. Like Rick comes back, like Lori and Shane thought Rick was dead. They've been screwing on the side. Lori's now pregnant, and like is like crap. Like Rick is not dead; he's actually still alive, and now they have to deal with this situation. Like that. That's an example. That's better. That makes sense. Here, not so much.
Still in the Summer Nomad arc, This is kind of unrelated, but I saw it on my notes and I thought it was really cool. Carl, after they leave the prison and Rick passes out, Carl tries to take care of himself and prove that he has that outburst at a passed out Rick about how he doesn't need him and how he hates him and stuff. And then when he thinks Rick has turned, he can't bring himself to shoot him. I thought that was some really good characterization.
Oh yeah, I remember that. Yeah, that's a good scene. And then it just turned out like then he started like groaning, and then like Carl actually thought, oh okay, he's just sick.
Yeah. There's also on the topic of Rick, there's the Lori phone. Do you remember that?
Oh yeah, that's right, the Lori phone.
Yeah. I love how in the Alexandria arc, after Carl gets shot, Lori just doesn't want to talk to him, and that just cures his schizophrenia.
Yeah.
Yeah. I didn't know that you could cure schizophrenia by pissing off your dead wife. It's a bit of it's kind of Hollywood, but it worked while it was a thing.
Yeah, well, Kirkland must have got the Fight Club rules of trying to cure mental illness. Just, oh, got a split personality? Stick a gun in your mouth and pull the trigger.
Yep.
I love Fight Club, but man, that scene still makes me laugh because
Murder Jacket Rick is just Rick listening to Tyler Durden.
Yeah, yeah. What's that smell? Okay, what's next on there?
Let's take a look. The hunters. The hunters. The people who ate Dale's leg.
Oh yeah.
They were mean motherfuckers, but by that time, Rick was meaner, and I love it. There's a scene where Dale is screaming tainted meat, and he gets knocked out and brought back to the group. And then when Rick and Abraham discover what the hunters are trying to do, he says they're going to feel really silly when they find out that they're fucking with the wrong people. And, that panel, it kind of looks goofy because of how Rick's eyes are slanted. They're not, they're kind of lopsided, but it is a very cool scene, and it kind of represents his turn from, the dutiful sheriff that he started out as to a cold-blooded killer. And then when they finally go to meet the cannibals, there's a scene that I effectively refer to as a hold him down, where he blows off the guy's ear, blows off the guy's finger with Andrea help, and then they torture the shit out of everyone.
Yeah.
While Gabriel watches.
Yeah.
And there's the big 2-page panel of him just saying, "Hold him down." That is one of the hardest moments in The Walking Dead. And I don't know if this is just because I don't like interacting with larger communities like The Walking Dead, but I never hear anyone talk about that scene in the comics. They talk about Glenn's death, Shane getting shot, stuff like that, but I never hear anyone talk about hold him down. And that's kind of a shame. What did you think of hold him down?
Yeah, I was actually like kind of shocked, like going back again, actually realizing and remembering that scene. I was like, oh, this is actually more brutal in the comic than it was in the show. Effectively, even though Rick cuts the dude down with that that red handle machete, great scene, but just that alone, and we don't even see what they do, but it's just Gabriel's just reaction is just that's enough to tell you, oh, they did something to him. You get some ideas when he confesses at Dale's grave, and he says stuff like every bashed in skull, every broken bone, and stuff like that. It's goddamn. Yeah, I wouldn't be shocked if they just went full on medieval on him and just pulled William Wallace just cut his limbs off one by one. I wouldn't be shocked if they did that.
And the hunters fucking deserved it. They ate children. They admitted to eating children with a smile on their face.
I know babies taste the best. I know what people taste like. Yeah, yeah. Fuck him. Still, holy
And
crap.
and of course, right after he admits all that stuff to Dale's grave, he turns around and sees Carl was listening the whole time, and that's when he shot Ben, uh, one of the Aaron twin or Allen twins. I kind of forgot to mention their whole arc because there's just so much that happens. But yeah, little kid murders his brother because he doesn't understand the concept of death and reanimation, and then Carl just blows his brains out because he's a fucking cold-hearted savage.
Oh yeah, that's right. That happened. Oh yeah.
Ooh, before we switch on to another arc, uh, this arc is where Morgan gets reintroduced in the comics, and he is like the most wasted of the wasted potentials. You see what happens to him in the show, where he becomes the wandering wise man, and it's fucking awesome.
Yeah.
And you go to the comics, and he's just disheveled guy who sleeps with Michonne and then gets bit.
Yep.
What a fucking waste.
Yeah. Yeah, like that is, yeah, again, that's another thing. Yeah. Like even though like I have my issues with Morgan, but that mostly comes with like Fear. From what I hear, I only watched like season 1 of Fear the Walking Dead. From what I've seen, like a lot of people don't like that show because it's the Morgan show now. But like Morgan in the main series, seeing his character journey was actually pretty good, and it was kind of a shock to go into this series to the comic and actually go, oh, he doesn't do all that much. Like kind of a.
He only has 2 good scenes, and that's when he, doesn't put down Dwayne, and when he's talking to Carl like he thinks he's Dwayne, when he's about to die.
Yeah, yeah. Like how he looked at Carl the entire time was actually pretty sad. I actually thought that was pretty good. And Carl's annoyance with him, I thought was pretty kind of funny in a messed up way, but.
Anyways, capping off the some more things from the Summer Nomad arc. Abraham's group is brought in, Cure, all that. Eugene is exposed as a fraud, and that's actually a pretty cool scene where he talks about why he lied, and it's actually some pretty good reasoning where you kind of feel for the guy.
Yeah.
Then Aaron is introduced, and he's like friendly guy. He talks about how there's this big group of like 40 people who would like more people, and you just have to follow them. And then Rick punches his lights out, and that kind of shows how they've progressed since the prison, where they approach this community with open arms, and then Rick gets his hand cut off, and this community approaches them with open arms, and Rick decks a guy.
Yep.
Then they arrive at Alexandria. And we move on to the Alexandria arc. What did you, first off, overview, what did you think of the Alexandria arc?
I think the arc is good. I think it's good, not great. I think serves better, like, when you think about it as setting the groundwork for what the comic later turns into. Like, I think that's the more interesting aspect when it comes to Alexandria, is setting up the other communities in the world. So even though like there's some neat scenes here and there, like Jesse we talked about earlier, that's a good example. But like also seeing these group of like survivors like trying to adjust to this what is essentially just suburbia, like
Yeah.
trapped in time basically.
Yeah,
Like, almost as like untouched by the apocalypse.
like a blackout or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's such a great arc. I really like it because it kind of represents just how thorough this group of seasoned survivors is, where they think about all this stuff that Douglas, the guy who was in charge, that kind of looks like Walter White mixed with old Aang. He didn't even consider like the Watchtower and the not leaving your construction crew to die in the case of Abraham. It also kind of shows some stuff of like, yeah, they're hardened survivors, but that means that they can't really socialize with other people. Michonne walks out of the party, although that could just be Michonne being an ass, which is, not out of character. What do you think of that kind of stuff?
I actually thought, like, to me, I thought it was pretty well done. I thought the writing was pretty well done. I thought, like, Michonne having a terrible time to adjust, I thought was, like, done well enough. If I have to be honest, yeah.
I thought it was pretty cool. I liked her and Morgan becoming close, and then they, sleep together, and Morgan's like, this is a mistake. And then Michonne's a bitch to him. It's something that she is a lot in the comics. She's kind of a bitch to everyone. She was a bitch to people in the show up until a point. And, in the show, she's a great character, but in the comics, she just, every relationship she gets into, if someone, like, vulnerably exposes themselves to her, she just lashes out. Like Morgan says, my wife is dead and my kid is dead and I think about them all the time, and she tells him to grow the fuck up and get over it. And you go to Ezekiel and he's like, I love that tiger so much, and now she's dead because of me. I watched my men die in front of me, and she punches him in the fucking face.
Oh yeah.
Yeah She's a lot harder to like in the comics.
She is, like, I won't lie. The only kind of reason I like Michonne in the comics is kind of because I liked her in the show. And it is kind of funny going back to the comic and going, wow, she's a bit of a bitch in this. And it's like, it's kind of weird, especially, like, I don't know if I want to play... I don't want to play the race card, like, too much, but I do think it's kind of silly how Michonne, like, essentially just fucks almost every other, like, black guy in the entire comic. Like, I do think it was kind of too obvious that she slept with Ezekiel, when I won't lie, I actually like her relationship with Rick in the show quite a bit. That's just me. I don't know.
I am a Walking Dead fan, but I have to admit I got kind of spotty with the later seasons.
That's like going a little... that's just me going a little... kind of weird. Kind of weird. Like, the one black lady has to sleep with every other black dude in the entire thing. I'm like, I'm not saying Kirkman's racist, but
Based Kirkman against the mixing of the races. Just fucking Photoshop him in a Klansman outfit. Yeah, I'm glad someone else picked up on that, because she's a homewrecker, but only if you're a black man.
Yeah.
So Lone, if you ever find yourself with a woman, and you see Michonne in the distance, run, because she's gonna suck that dick.
Damn it.
No. Yeah, and that just kind of makes me appreciate Heath. He's not a very major character. He has a thing with Alice, the doctor of Alexandria, and his friend dies. He doesn't really do that much from what I've read, and I've read all of it. But I do appreciate him being the one man to turn down, the black tomboy with the samurai sword. That's a man I'd follow into battle. He's strong.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Other stuff in Alexandria. I like how Carl doesn't like Alexandria. I like the reasons why he doesn't like it. He views them as trying to act as if nothing is going on behind the walls. And in a way, he's kind of correct. And, Rick tries to correct him and be like, you'll be fine. And then the wall breaks down. And Carl gets shot again. And Rick kind of, he doesn't explicitly, think about what Carl said, but I like to imagine he thinks about what his son said of them, trying to imagine what happens up beyond the walls isn't real.
Yeah, I actually like that aspect of Carl a lot in this particular arc. I kind of agree with you there in that regard.
Another thing on Carl that I really like is another savage Carl moment, if you will. When Pete dies because Rick shot him because he killed Regina. Death everywhere. Pete's kid, Ron, is hanging out with Carl, and he's like, "Your daddy shot my daddy," and he's like, "Yeah," and he shot a lot of other people, and I also have. And then Ron starts breaking down and said, "Why does your daddy get to live and mine doesn't?" And Carl just says, "Because your dad was a piece of shit," and then goes to bed.
Yeah. Yeah.
Let's look at the notes again. Something about the Alexandria arc that I don't like, that is blatant melodrama, that I didn't believe even when I first read it, was Michonne retiring her sword.
Oh,
where she
yeah.
puts those 2 nails in the wall and hangs it up. When I read that for the first time, I was like, okay, that's bullshit. They're not going to do that.
And shocker, they don't stick with it.
Yeah. Because no, you're not going to throw away the hot black samurai tomboy. You're just not. I don't believe you. There's also when they first get there, and Rick still doesn't trust anyone. They make a plot, him, Glenn, and I think Andrea. I might just be misremembering. They make a plot to steal back the guns, so that in case someone tries to kick them out, they can, take over. I think that's a great way to show that they're really not well adjusted to Alexandria. They're very useful, but they're not exactly built for this community yet. What'd you think of that piece? Them stealing the guns, and then Rick beating the shit out of Pete and going on his crazy man speech. What'd you think of that?
I thought that was pretty good, honestly. Like you said, the group has not at all adjusted to it, because that's how their survivor mindset hasn't gone away at all. They're still, and obviously you can't blame them. The world's still as it is. The world's still messed up. So of course, and despite being under a roof and having running water and stuff like that, of course they can't just pretend the last year and a half or so of all the bad shit that happened. They just can't pretend that all just went away and sweep it under the rug. So of course you get that because you've been following them this entire time.
Yeah. And I also like how Douglas, the guy who's in charge of Alexandria, he isn't, how dare you? He sits down with Rick and he's like, all right, I understand why you did it, and I understand that when you pulled that gun on me, it was more of a show of force than you actually attempting to kill me. That's one of the reasons why I let you in, because you got that survivor mindset. But if you don't adjust yourself, I'm going to kill you like I did Davidson. That Douglas, he's not a very major character, but for the scenes that we did have him, he was pretty cool. He does live in a sheltered community, and he's not as smart as Rick, but he's not stupid either. I really appreciated him.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And eventually, he's no longer leader of Alexandria because he just doesn't fucking feel like it anymore. His wife died, and he went full doomer mode.
Yep.
Anyways, notes. Let's fast forward. The wall, when it breaks, that is a pretty hectic scene. And there is something in it that I kind of noticed that I don't think Kirkman noticed. It breaks, and Ron, Jesse, Carl, and Rick all go out in gore cloaks to walk through the herd. And Ron pisses himself, gets eaten. Jesse holds on to Carl, gets eaten. And Rick cuts off her hand. While all this is happening, Douglas goes outside to kill himself with a gun and be eaten. But he can't bring himself to pull the trigger in time, and he ends up firing off a bunch of shots. One of them hits Carl in the eye, and that's where he gets his, iconic one-eye look. And that causes Rick to, rush him to Alice's place and get him fixed up. And right after that, Rick goes on a sort of killing spree where he's just tearing through as many walkers as he can to keep the building safe. And people see that, like Michonne sees that, Morgan sees that, all of them see that, and they start coming out and they start fighting the walkers. You can find the panels, and they I don't think Morgan came out because he's already bit by that point. Scratch him. A bunch of people come out and they start fighting, and they win. They kill the entire horde through melee combat. And this, right after that scene, Rick starts, feeling bad about what he did because he sees we cleared the walkers. We didn't need to walk out because I didn't have to force Jesse and Ron out. Me and my friends could have just gone out and killed them. And he feels super guilty over their deaths. But the thing about that scene is, if he had not set up those events in that order, where he brings out Jesse and Ron before they're ready, and they get eaten, Carl would not have gotten shot in the eye. And if Carl had not gotten shot in the eye, Rick would not have had the motivation to go out killing walkers, and everyone else would not have seen him killing walkers and came out to join him. And thus, there, in a universe where he did not wait for Ron and Jesse, or just stay in the house, those walkers could have just stayed in Alexandria and everyone would have died. And while it's a great scene for Rick, becoming a better man, what the world is, it is kind of a bit of a plot hole when you think about it. Sorry if I'm kind of just rambling. I don't know how to explain it.
No, I get your point. You actually are making a lot of sense in a way. It's a great scene. It's a very well done moment in the series. Just Rick just practically just all pretty convinced dude got shot in the eye. Carl got shot in the eye. As far as he
see that panel.
Yeah.
You see that panel where half of his face is carved out. He's missing an ear. That's fucking brutal. And just the smallest little dad. That is death scene incarnate. You can't blame him.
Yeah, and Rick just lost all hope. He's like, no, screw that. I'm gonna take as many out as possible, and if I die in the process, whatever. That was clearly his mindset. And in the end of that, ended up taking the entire horde.
Yeah, that's where he learns the real way to protect Carl and stuff is community, and how he should have seen that all along, and how he should have treated Alexandria better and stuff, and how he should have considered the community, and specifically Jesse and Ron, and shouldn't have forced them out because he caused their deaths. But in a weird sort of twist of fate, if he had not made that mistake, they would have all probably died. Moving on, there's some small things. Carl comes to and he doesn't remember Lori's death, and Rick has to explain it to him. There's a panel where Abraham says, and I quote, "Yeah, let's fuck this dog." No comma between this and dog. He just says, "Let's fuck this dog." Nicholas plans a coup, and Rick talks him down instead of shooting him, despite later admitting that he really wanted to shoot Nicholas, which I don't blame him for. What'd you think of that?
That kind of shows, I don't know. When it comes to Rick's, that was kind of the first, maybe not the first, but kind of an early sign of the whole merciful Rick thing that Kirkland was trying to do, where that kind of contradict the character that was setting up.
It's a redemption arc.
Yeah, this weird redemption arc going when you were establishing, especially after we talked about that famous scene with the
hunters?
Not the hunters and the claimers as well. Those two examples of Rick just losing all humanity just to protect what he cares about. Had Kirkland kept on that track, I do think he had a way more interesting story arc had he continued that, as opposed to doing this whole merciful Rick thing going on. And I don't know if Nicholas was the first indicator of that, but it definitely kind of shows. I'm like, no, I do think Rick would have shot him. I do think Rick would have killed him.
I kind of see where he's coming from, and I do like it because the same Rick that ripped out the claimer's throat and butchered the hunters alive is the same Rick who led to the deaths of Jesse and Ron, which, although Rick was willing to let them die, he did care about them. And this is like one of the first scenes of him bettering himself to become the strong community-driven leader that is needed to keep Alexandria safe. Not just his family safe, but Alexandria, which, by extension keeps his family safe. So I like it. And to cap off where I personally end the Alexandria arc, chapter 15, the end, Andrea comes on to Rick. She kisses him, and that leads to the power couple of the series. What'd you think of that, Andrea and Rick?
I thought their relationship was decent. I thought the relationship was kind of well done. I honestly don't have much to say in that regard, to be honest. Like, their relationship doesn't stick out to me as much compared to like some others. I think Glenn and Maggie's like the one that really pops up in my mind. Like, the relationship that Rick has in the comic, I don't think are that memorable to me, at least. That's just a me thing, honestly.
I think they worked. I think they work well together, or worked well together, because something happens in a later arc that ends that relationship, and it's kind of fucking bullshit. If you remember,
Oh yeah.
I'm talking about way later in either the Whisper or Community arc. I think it's Whisper, when they're herding walkers with horses, literally riding through the herds, which admittedly is some pretty badass visuals, but it's retarded. And Andrea dies because she gets like the teensiest little scratch on her neck. And that's how Kirkman ends the power relationship of the marksman sniper and the leader.
Yeah.
Did you catch that?
Yeah, I caught that. Yeah. That was a reminder that I was like, yeah, that's an example. Like, that's a later thing that actually happens, and that's when like Walking Dead, like comic wise, was definitely like really showing its cracks.
Yeah. On to where I personally start the war arc, the introduction of Jesus, which is a great way to name a character.
Like, that's his nickname. Like, his real name's like Paul something, like, ain't it?
Yeah, Paul Monroe.
Yeah, Paul Monroe. But my friends call me Jesus.
Yeah. I like him. I hate how the show literally killed him just to introduce the Whispers.
Yeah. Man, that sucks. Like, the dude's a really good character. He was like already instantly like a fan favorite. Like,
oh, I forgot to mention this, but back in Alexandria, Summer Nomad, Aaron, him and Eric, the gay couple, in the comic, I don't know about the show, I haven't really paid attention. They are like one of the only good gay couples I've ever seen. Like, their relationship, it feels like an actual relationship instead of just they gay. They do butt sex. They argue, they talk, they discuss things, they have jokes. What'd you think of that?
because they're a real couple.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not like the ideal, like, because obviously Kirkland wrote, because Kirkland's actually a good writer and he's not pandering, he's not doing anything. This isn't like a modern Marvel, DC comic or Image comic or whatever, where
he wasn't pandering yet.
Well,
that happens after war.
That happened. Yeah, that we can get to that. But yeah, their relationship actually felt like genuine. It was a genuine, well done relationship, and it actually sucked how that turned out.
Yeah, they were very adorable. To compare them to a hot topic, Last of Us episode 3. They are what that relationship wishes it was.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Oh god, and it fucking sucks that spoilers. You know, we've put a lot of spoilers in this already, but spoilers. Eric dies in war. He gets like shot in an off panel, and you see like Aaron cradle his dead body,
Mm-hmm.
and it's upsetting. You know, yeah. Jesus is introduced, and he's badass, but he later becomes a part of that thing, the gay pandering. What'd you think about his introduction? I thought it was pretty cool.
I thought his introduction was pretty cool. Yeah, like as well. I thought it was pretty neat, and I thought like the whole him essentially being the means to show not only the reader but the group that there is a larger world like out there, that there are other communities, and also leads up to what is essentially like one of the major villains like of the series, and possibly the best villain
Yeah,
if you want to have that debate. But I guess we can get to that when we get to that. But yeah,
I love Negan, but I do have my problems with
yeah.
it. Anyways, Andrea tries to get with Rick, but he's afraid that she'll end up dying. Later on, they get together, and way later, she ends up dying, all because Kirkman needed drama and forgot about this conversation where he talks about how he feels like he's a death curse to people, where he feels like everyone he cares about is going to die, and so he doesn't want to care about Andrea.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things that happen in those last two arcs that I really don't like, if you couldn't tell.
Yep.
There's also a little funny scene where several characters in the series, Michonne, she like talks to her dead boyfriend. Rick, he talks to the Lord phone. Andrea starts talking to Dale's cap, but then she realizes what she's doing and just throws it away. I thought that was pretty funny.
Yeah, that's kind of a neat little like, okay, this character's not doing this.
Yeah. I also love how when Jesus is introduced, Rick knocks him out, much like Aaron did, and Aaron comments on this. It's just not a good way of foreign diplomacy, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Something I didn't put down in my notes, but it's also pretty important, is when Jesus is leading them to Hilltop, he takes his time talking to the group and stuff, and like Carl and stuff, and he reveals that he was like never in danger. He could just get out at any time, and that he was just testing them to see if they passed. And after talking to Carl, apparently Rick passed as a leader. This grows into something later on, where in war, like war proper, there's a panel with Jesus and Rick with like the sun shining in the background, where let me find it. Jesus himself says to Rick, "You're a leader we can follow," because Kirkman apparently loves being heavy-handed.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, to be honest, I'd probably do something similar in one of my books.
Mm-hmm.
At Hilltop, they see this community of like 200 people, and hear about some guy named Negan, who everyone is afraid of. And I think it's personally a very great introduction, with like Ethan coming in, not Ethan Winters, Ethan the Walking Dead character. And he like stabs the leader of this group because he's afraid of what Negan will do to somebody, or what Negan will do to this entire settlement. It's such a great way to introduce a villain. What do you think of it?
I actually think that's a great scene. And it also shows like like Rick just cutting the dude's throat open.
What?
And getting blood just pouring all over him. He just gets up, and everyone's
And he
just
says,
looking at him.
"What?"
What? Like, everyone just looks at him in shock because it's just, like, killing's so easy for him, he just doesn't care. It's just, like, you try to kill, shoot, what's the doggone dude's name?
He tried to kill Gregory.
Gregory.
And Rick as well.
Yeah, you try to kill Gregory and then me.
And then the guards are like, we're going to take your gun. And they just levels it at them and says calmly, I don't think you will. That's such a fucking badass panel.
Yeah.
I love it. So anyways, after that, a group of Negan's guys try to rob Rick's convoy. And they kill all of them. And they like send the guy off to be a message thinking they're hot shit. Afterwards, Maggie's pregnant. And Glenn's happy he can be a father. Isn't life great? Rick and Andrea officially hook up. And, you know, I say they make a great couple. They push War Arc and to be so good, and they keep Whisper Arc and Commonwealth Arc from being even worse. This is one of my favorite scenes. Even though I do love Abraham as a character, I love this scene for what it represents. Eugene and Abraham are walking to a bullet factory, talking about Rosita and Eugene, and then Abraham fucking dies. And that's like an escalation of the governor cutting off Rick's hand.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he cut off Rick's hand to show that, you know, he can't be fucked with. He mutilated the protagonist. Yeah, Negan killed the protagonist's best friend. And he does it again later.
Yeah.
Oh, man. After Abraham dies and, people start shooting at each other, Glenn and Maggie decide they want to move to Hilltop so that they can both be safe. So, in order to help them with this, Rick, Carl, Maggie, Glenn, Sophia, Heath, and Michonne all pile into a van to Hilltop. And this, while they're camping in the middle of the night, is where we meet Negan.
Hi. You're Rick, right? I'm Negan. And I do not appreciate you killing my men. Also, when I sent my people to kill your people for killing my people, you killed more of my people. Not cool. Not fucking cool. You have no fucking idea how not fucking cool that shit is. But I think you're gonna be up to speed here shortly. Yeah. You are so gonna regret crossing me in a few minutes. Fuck yeah, you are. You see, Rick, whatever you do, no matter fucking what, you do not mess with the New World Order. The New World Order is this, and it's really very simple. Even if you're fucking stupid, which you very well may be, you can understand it. Now, I know that is a mighty big, nasty pill to swallow. But swallow it, you most certainly motherfucking will. You ruled the roost. You built something. You thought you were safe. I get it. But the word is out. You are not safe, not even fucking close. In fact, you are fucked. More fucked if you don't give me what I want. And what I want is half your shit. And if that's too much, then you can go make, find, or steal more, and it'll even out sooner or later. This is your way of life now. The more you fight back, the harder it will be. So, if someone comes to your door, you fucking let us in. We own that fucking door. I am gonna beat the holy fuckity fuck out of one of you.
and it is such a great display of force for the man. But it does contain a problem I do have with him. This is probably subjective, subjective. But I think Negan swears way too much to be taken seriously. It's kind of like, Castlevania, Death. Death in that show swears a lot.
He talks like a Redditor, yeah.
My treasure! You gulping little shit. Why is it that only human hands can reach into hell? Don't you think that's weirdly fucked up? I can't do it.
Yeah, and it makes it impossible to take him seriously.
Well, the thing with Death in that, well, I get what you mean, but the thing with Death in that is that he's an eldritch being and he shouldn't be swearing, period. And the fact that his dialogue is just so terrible, and it's like, it just made worse the fact that it's the fact that Malcolm McDowell is voicing him, a really good actor, a really good voice actor. He actually plays a damn good villain, Jordan Stahl, in Killzone 3. I actually think he's a really good choice for Death, the voice of Death. And he talks like a Redditor, like, I'm gonna take your soul, shit it out, and use it to smother your fucking girlfriend to death. That is not something an entity would say. Now, profanity in dialogue can really depend on how it's written. You'll have writers like, okay, I think a good example, like the dialogue in Bright, I think is a good example, where characters will sometimes curse for no reason. There's no flow to it. While you compare that to something like a Quentin Tarantino film, where it's very snappy, it's very quick, and each character talks in their own way, and there's personality to it. So here,
Dead African American Storage is a great example.
Dead nigga Storage, yeah, like that's a good example. So here, I'm kind of split in regards to Negan's dialogue, and even more so after like watching the uncensored version on the TV show, because it's basically word for word, and seeing someone say the lines out loud, like, it's understandable why some people would say, yeah, the uncensored, like the censored version, the TV version is the better version, because like when you hear, and Jeffrey D. Morgan does his best, and he does a good job, and he's really good, when he says, I'm gonna beat the fuckity fuck out of you, I'm
sorry, homie. No one can make that line work.
No one can make that line work. He tries his best. He tries, but
unless you try to say it like a Borderlands antagonist, it's not going to work, because it's just not a serious line.
Which I get, because in that moment, like, Negan isn't like he has that big smile on his face. He has that baseball bat. He looks like Babe Ruth and stuff like that. And he's like supposed to be like this larger than life dude. He's like, well, what do we have here? Like that type of stuff. So, but yeah, you're not wrong in that regard, even though I do think just have him drop a few less F-bombs, I think, will be a little bit better.
He needs to cut about 80%, and 80%. Then it'll be normal.
Yeah. but still, it's a good speech, though. Like, in that moment, and this is something I think the comic obviously does better than the show does, and we've said this on stream already, but I'm going to say it again here. It is not Andrew Lincoln's fault that he's acting that way. It's the direction's fault. I really hate how he's crying and whining like that. I really don't like that. He's a lot better in the comics, a lot more reserved. And even then, he isn't completely broken. That's the big difference. Like, and I know I'm skipping ahead a bit here, but he actually whispers to Jesus' ear, keep an eye on them, track them down. This is going to stay between us. Like, when I read that, I was like, okay, that's automatically better.
Much like a Skaven, Rick admits feat only temporarily.
Which is good, which is badass. But to get back to Negan's introduction, it's strong, it's good. Just minus some of the excessive swearing. Because it's not Tarantino dialogue, sadly enough. It's not that where it's not Martin dialogue or Tarantino dialogue where characters will swear up a storm. or even Joe Abercrombie dialogue. Characters cussing that in those books as well a lot. But like it's still honestly well done, minus the profanity stuff. It still like stands out. It's still a really great scene, and it's actually kind of, it has a dark comedy edge to it, if that makes sense, where he's like trying to pick like who to kill first, or who to kill, and he's like he doesn't want to.
It's a game to him.
He doesn't want to kill Glenn because, like, not you, race card. And he looks at Michonne and he's like, no, not you either. I don't want to be seen as racist. And he does eeny, meeny, miny, mo, catch a tiger by his toe. Like, he does that. And then the iconic page of issue 100, the page that was a lot of contention in both comic and show, even though I think show did it worse. But that could be attributed to scheduling and the time it came out, and Glenn in the show having already a fake out, like 2-3 fake outs at that point.
Glenn nearly dies like 11 times in his time on the show.
Yeah, and he has.
But like, that's kind of just his thing.
Yeah, and then when he actually does, it's one of the reasons why I'm like, yeah, the show doesn't need to be 100% one-to-one adaptation of the comic. Honestly, some of the changes it made are honestly kind of better in some aspects, and keeping Glenn alive would have been smarter, and killing Abraham would have been better. But comics, but like Glenn in the comic, his death, I thought, in a way, I thought was well enough. Its brutality, I do think kind of fits. Like
the way his jaw disintegrates on the second hit always messes with me.
Yeah, like a baseball bat wrapped in barbed wire, literally hits him, popped his eye out, hits him again, knocks his entire jawline out, all of his teeth come out, and Negan just completes to bash his head in, his skull in, and you just see panels of just him swinging, and it's just his silhouette. And I thought that was really done art-wise.
You see, like, the finished product where his fucking top of his head is peeled open, his teeth are on the ground, he's, like, got a pool of blood and his eyes popped out. It's fucking grotesque. Something about this scene that a lot of people don't really mention, but I think is very important, is, like, after Negan leaves, all hell breaks loose. Maggie beats up Rick, Carl draws on her, Sophia bites Carl. It just shows how impactful this death was. And after that is Carl, unlike how he's, portrayed usually, he actually goes to comfort Sophia about her father's, death. And originally when I was reading through the Walking Dead comics, I kind of mentally skipped over that, and I was wondering, hey, why do these two get together in the flashback? And I see stuff like that. I see stuff like him, kissing her on the cheek, and I'm like, there was something building there.
Yep.
And something about, the aftermath of that scene with, like, Maggie beating the shit out of Rick, and then her later on during war saying, I believe in Rick Grimes. I don't know if that's just, how long I think that the timeline was going on, in my mind. Like, I thought it was like a couple weeks later, but I felt like that was a little too quick for Maggie to forgive him. What'd you think?
I don't know, like, the I believe in Rick Grimes line, I do think, I'm a little iffy on that. It does feel a little too gung-ho-y, if that makes sense.
It's like that combined with Jesus, combined with his later Bob Ross look, is kind of almost making him a messiah figure.
Yeah, it does.
One-handed Jesus who bites out people's throats.
One-handed Jesus. That does sound like something Negan would say, wouldn't it? Well, what do we have here? One-handed Jesus.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're not wrong. Maggie did seem a little too quick to forgive him in some aspects. Like, there should have been, like, unironic. You could have had some good drama with Maggie and Rick, and actually have her have that bit of hatred for him, because I mean, even though they're surrounded by like
Even-
what, like 200 people? It was like 50
Yeah.
people. Like they were surrounded by an entire army in that situation. What were you gonna do? But understandably, she's angry, and you don't blame her.
When I first started reading out that scene, I was already spoiled on that moment in the comics, so I knew what was going to happen. But I imagine if I didn't know, I would have, imagine like back in the day when this was first released, you're thinking, oh, it's probably just going to be Heath because he's like the minor supporting character, and then the guy picks out fucking Glenn, who's been there since the beginning. That must have been a great fake out when it came out.
Mm-hmm.
Anyways, after that, Rick, he becomes Negan's bitch. Negan makes an offhanded comment about having his men run a train on Carl.
Yeah.
That, he later admits that was all just hot air, but it's still kind of weird to read. He arrives at Alexandria as a display of power, taking as he pleases and humiliating Rick in the process. And it's such a great scene where he has Rick hold the bat that he used to bash in his friend's head for him as like a fucking butler as he goes around demeaning his people. What'd you think of that scene?
I think that's a good scene, and like Rick's frustration in that moment, I thought was really well done. But then, like I said, better in a comic than it is in a show, hands down, because like that panel where he talks to the entire community and actually says, "Hey, we gotta work this out. You gotta deal with this," and then you realize later on, like, no, that he was just playing a role that entire time. Like, no, we're gonna fight these guys, but we're gonna be smart about this because we do not have the advantage right now. That I like. That I thought was well done. It's just Rick's frustration. He's just grinning his teeth. But you know what? I am in this situation, but I need to play this smart. I need to be smart about this. I cannot do this like we've done this in the past. Like, this is not a governor situation where we can actually take him on. Like, he has an actual army on his side. So, like...
Yeah, and like every scene you see of him where he's like holding the bat, his entire face is like caked in shadow. Like, he's got that anime anger about him.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Yeah. And there's also a little part where Carl says that he's going to kill Negan or something along those lines. And Negan's like not taking him seriously, like, oh, you got some balls, little boy. And then, later he follows him to his compound and kills 6 of his guys.
With a freaking Colt M16, which is hilarious.
It was not just any Colt 6 and X and whatever. It was Abraham's.
Oh, that was his. Shoot.
Yeah, so there's probably some symbolism behind that one.
I didn't even notice that. Oh, okay, that was his gun. I knew that looked like familiar. It was like, yeah, that was just some random one. So that was Abraham's gun. That's actually okay. And in a way, Carl being younger kind of makes the scene a little bit better in a way. Just seeing this, 10-year-old, 12-year-old kid barely hold his gun that's practically twice his size. Just accidentally kill almost everybody.
Yeah, well, there wasn't really anything the show could do about that. This is kind of going off topic, but that kind of sucks in the show's favor. Sometimes, the show's not perfect, but sometimes they do try. And something that makes it hard for them to try to make the show as good as possible is the fact that even though it's like 2 years into the apocalypse, and when it started, Carl was like 7, he's visibly 18.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of just unfortunate. Anyways, Jesus and Rick are doing some plotting. Jesus follows Dwight from the office to Negan's compound. He gets captured and pulls another escape act just as they get there. That combined with what Carl sees, they have a plan. But before they collaborate all this together, Negan shows Carl around the compound because he's impressed with what this little shit has done. And there's so many great scenes with it. With Negan wanting to see Carl's eye, and then he picks on him for it and feels super bad when the kid cries. He shows him around, and all the while we don't see it, Carl is taking note of how many people there are, how is the place laid out, all that good stuff. It's such a great scene.
Mm-hmm.
What'd you think of that?
I think it's a great scene. Like, really shows how far the dude's actually come. Like, despite being pretty much the youngest, like, well, at least one of the youngest in the group, doesn't mean he's useless. He actually plays a pretty good role, and it's neat seeing how, like, clever and smart he actually is.
And it's also great because it shows that even though Negan is a psychopath who will literally beat in your friend's head and then brag to you about it, he does feel bad when he makes a little kid cry. A little one-eyed kid cry.
Mm-hmm.
And then when he goes to Rick, there's this scene that I don't hear people talk about. He like shows up to Rick and he says, "I can't wait for you to see what I did to your boy," and that sets Rick off. Negan was just baiting him with that comment, but Rick like immediately headbutts him and starts giving him the left hook and says, "What did you do to my boy?" And it's fucking amazing. He bites Negan. And Negan's like, "What the fuck are you doing? I was just kidding. Stop." What do you think of that? Do you remember it?
Oh yeah, I remember it. Like, it just reminded me. Yeah, like best not to tell like a man who almost witnessed his son getting raped right in front of him to actually comment about stuff like that. Just saying, you might set him off.
Yeah. And he afterwards he kind of respects him for just wailing into him for that. Anyways, Carl knows the layout. Jesus knows where it is. They combine that information, and they go to Ezekiel, a pretty interesting character who dies in a pretty interesting way. What do you think of Ezekiel?
I thought Ezekiel was pretty cool, honestly. Like, I thought the character was pretty neat, and the fact he has a pet tiger. Like, come on, that's pretty awesome. Let's be frank.
Yeah, I love Shiva. For the short time we had her, I remember when everyone asked, "Is that a pet tiger?" And that one time we brought over to Alexandria, and she shat in Michonne's tub.
Oh yeah, that happened.
Yep, that's one of my favorite panels. Just Ezekiel in the doorway with a mug of coffee, saying that his tiger shit in his date's tub.
Ugh.
Yeah. Anyways, they're talking about war. Dwight comes along and says he wants to help. Rick gives him the left hook that he's so well known for. And they start amassing an army. Negan shows up unannounced to Alexandria, and with the help of Andrea, Rick tries to pull a JFK and blow Negan's head off, and it doesn't work. And the entire scene, from like when it starts and like Andrea misses the shot or whatever happened, I can't remember the exact details, to like the silence as Negan deals with the fact that Carl shot Lucille, and he wants Alexandria to throw him over the wall or else he'll start beating in people's heads, to the gunfight that comes afterwards. All of it is such a great fucking scene. What did you think of it?
Yeah, I thought it was actually pretty good. I actually thought I thought that was actually pretty well done, pretty well structured, like scene, especially that writing wise. I was actually kind of shocked how, like, going back through it, I was actually kind of like, huh, this is actually pretty good.
Yeah, a great thing with the war arc is, the war arc and the prison arc and the stuff. Mainly the war arc though, with Negan and his shit, is the characters have to fucking earn their victories. And they go through some intense mental stress on the way, because Rick is like entirely at Negan's mercy for like a good 10 or so in-universe minutes. Anyways, after that, war officially begins. Chapter 20. My first note: Andrea is smoking hot. Yeah. Do you agree?
Yeah, she is.
Everyone goes to the compound, the whole army. Rick fires 2 shots in the air, and he tries to make one last Hail Mary peace offering. Negan effectively wipes his ass with it, and then everyone starts firing. everyone packs up after shooting the chains of the walkers and sicking them on the compound. And Rick plans to stay while everyone leaves. And when I read that, I thought that doesn't really make much sense, because not only is he like the leader effectively of this revolution, if you will, he's also like a great strategic mind. Why would he trap himself here with Negan? He states in universe that Negan isn't going to kill him because Negan doesn't want to kill him, but Negan doesn't have to kill him to do bad shit to him. Why did he want to stay? And after that, why did Holly just randomly decide that she wanted to take his place and forces him to leave while she drives a car into this concrete compound expecting to do shit?
I don't know. Beats me. Like, the shoddiness of the writing was definitely showing, especially here. All out war I like, but I've said this before, I do think it's a tad overrated for one thing. I do think it goes a bit too long. It didn't need to be 12 issues. At most, it could have been 7 or 8. I do think it's a bit stretched. It would have been stronger if it was a bit more condensed. When you really, as much as I like it, you look at it at a distance, it really surmounts to back and forth. Rick gets a up hand on Negan, Negan gets a hand on Rick, back and forth. That's kind of what it is. Granted, I like it, and the in-between moments are great, and there are a lot of good moments in it. Especially when they get to Alexandria, and Negan just starts tossing grenades, and leading up to, what was it, Jesus that actually leaps up and actually tosses one back, leading to a pretty cool panel. Like, yeah.
There was
Yeah, go ahead.
There was one missed opportunity at Alexandria. Negan should have, for at least one grenade, pulled the pin, threw it up, and then hit it with his bat to make it go over the fence.
That was a waste opportunity, huh? I'm not gonna lie, I do think I may have thought, no, it would have been funny if he did that. like, dang, it would have been funny if they actually did that though.
Yeah. Anyways, as you were.
Yeah. I think another thing to point out, I do like the whole like the tainted Lucille, him poisoning it, if you know what I mean, like him using like Walker like flesh, wrapping around the barbed wire. I actually thought that was cool. It's like him just rubbing it on a few walkers and him just using that as like, one sting on this, you're screwed. Like, I like that.
That, however, brings up another thing. How did no one else ever think about this in like the entire 2 years of the apocalypse?
No idea.
Yeah. Also, it kind of just shows up. There is no like discovery that he has where like he stabs a walker with his knife and he like cuts another guy during a battle, and then he later sees that guy became a walker from that cut and he goes, there's nothing like that. It just sort of happens.
Yeah.
After Holly drives the car into the concrete building and surprise, surprise, doesn't do shit to hurt the saviors, she gets kidnapped. There was a pretty cool characterization scene for Negan where some guy comes in and tries to rape her and Negan just cold-heartedly stabs him.
I like the line. I like the line in the show. I do not accept your apology. I do like that line. But yeah,
that was a great addition.
Yeah, great scene in the comic and the show, to be honest. Even though it was a it's Holly in the comic. It's who else in the damn show?
Sandra,
yeah, exactly. That's her name. Yeah, it was her in the show, and a pretty weird reversal, like when it comes to the two characters' deaths. If you want to talk about that.
Sandra wasn't in the comics.
No. I mean how she dies, like how she and Holly die. They kind of die the same way, but it's done differently in both.
Yeah, one's an assassination attempt, and the other is an assassination attempt, but on a different person.
On a different person, which is actually kind of funny when you go back and read the comics. Like, oh yeah, that's weird. That happened because they bring her in to the gate and they remove the sack over her. Shocker, she's a walker the whole time. It was like, whoa.
Yeah, you couldn't see her walking differently or not making human sounds.
Ugh,
Uh,
yeah.
Also, when the Walker's bag is taken off, she bites the one doctor in Alexandria, which is pretty fucking convenient.
Mm,
And also, that kind of goes along with this thing that I have with The Walking Dead, where I noticed that being any sort of health professional is usually just a mark of death, because you have Herschel, you have the fucking the doctor guy from Woodbury, you have the doctor guy's assistant, then you have the doctor from Alexandria, and I think like the only one that survives is the doctor from Hilltop, and he's like the only one. And I think
yeah.
that's just because he's gay and he has gay magic powers or something.
Gay magic powers.
He has the power of being a protected class.
Yeah. Oh, another thing that I think is really, really stupid how All Out War kind of ends is that I don't know if this was meant to be funny, but I laughed my ass off like twice reading this. Now, did you remember Rick talks to Negan, right? And he says, "Hey, we can establish trade, we can build what once was, we can start over, we can start civilization all over again." And Negan's like, "Shit, I never thought of that." And Rick just slashes him across the throat. And I was like, "Was this meant to be funny? Was this meant to be funny?" Like Negan literally legit goes, "I never thought of that." Like,
Yeah, that's kind of silly in retrospect.
yeah, it's like I won't lie. The first time I read that, I actually thought Negan was gonna punch him in the face or something like that. He was like, "Dude, you think I'm an idiot or something?" Like, that's what I thought was leading up to. But no, that was genuine. Like Negan was genuinely going, "Oh my god, I never thought that." And Rick's the one who ends up slashing his throat, which is cool. It's cool. Rick still has that edge on him. He still got that thing over him. But really, I never thought of that. Like, come on.
Yeah, I imagine that Negan, in reality, reality as far as zombie stuff goes, I imagine that he would have thought of that. It's just like he wants to be like, kind of like the federal government, where everything goes through him and he always gets taxed. That's kind of like his half policy, where all the communities under him have to give him half of their shit. That would just kind of go on with trade if he were to do it.
Mm.
Yeah. Anyways, during war, Maggie steps up to lead Hilltop. Not very interesting. She just kind of kicks Gregory in the balls and says, "Me king now." Eric dies, one of the only good gay relationships in modern media, ending only to be replaced by two gay characters getting together with no chemistry whatever, cause gay.
Big gay.
Yeah. They make a point of it in the books where Aaron says that me and Eric used to joke that we only got together because we were the only two gay people left on Earth, but I did genuinely love him, and I don't know if I'll ever be able to find someone for me again. And like around this time, Jesus is revealed to be gay for some lieutenant of his, and then they like break up, and he gets together with Aaron, and that just kind of shits on Aaron's whole lonely arc, if you call it.
Yeah.
What'd you think of that?
Yeah, like the whole thing, like afterwards, I thought, yeah, it was really mixed. And like I said before, like Kirkland was definitely running out of steam in regards to Walking Dead, even though it's kind of hilarious how, like, I believe this is something I've heard, and I think this was back when I used to watch channel Emergency Awesome, Charlie, where he would say, Kirkland said that he'll stop writing when they stop making money, but the problem with that is this particular series doesn't lend itself as much as he thinks it does. Granted, there are a few ideas and concepts that you could expand on, like, obviously, and I am kind of jumping ahead here, but it was quite clear after Rick's death that Carl was going to be the main character, and that the series was going to go on for like another God knows how long, up until you finally reach the old man Carl, which more than likely was like probably not originally supposed to be like a time jump. More than likely, it was going to be you were going to see Carl's growth as you see him like lead, and you were going to see like the world turn into the Wild West again.
We are going to get to that,
Mm-hmm.
but something related to that. He said one time he said that he wanted to make it to issue 200 before he quit. He only made it to issue 192. And, the issues leading up to that were pretty fucking ass. So not only did he, not complete his story in a satisfactory way, he also didn't finish his personal goal.
Which, I don't know if you watched my Saga video, and I really don't like to be that person say, oh, watch my Saga video, but like, personal goals, in terms of comics, if your personal goal is so out of reach like that, just know when to quit. At least Kirkman knew when to quit. Brian, I think, like, Brian knew.
He was 8 issues away.
He was 8 issues away, but God, it does make me look at Brian and go, dude, like, oh my God, he like 103, 104 issues, and he's like barely halfway done with his. I'm still pissed, honestly. It's Garza Saga. I don't know if I'll do a video when the volume wraps up, which it might be a few months till that happens, but Jesus Christ, I'm still...
To be honest with you, I feel like I don't really know anything about Saga, but based on what I've heard, it's a great story that kind of lost steam, killed off a main character and is still going on. I feel like that's one of those series that just sort of spins out and then never comes back.
Yeah.
Kind of like what was that series? I guess that's point enough of what it might become. I was going to give as an example.
Yeah.
Sorry.
It's fine. Like, I'm the one who went on a tangent in regards to Saga. It was like, I think, obviously, I'll probably say Kirkland's a better writer than Brian K. Vaughan, honestly, in some aspects. They both wrote some really good stuff. But at least Kirkland knew when to quit. That's one thing I'll say.
The kingdom's front in the war is a failure. Shiva dies, and it's really sad. Michonne refuses to stop her common theme of being a complete bitch to those in grieving. Kingdom, they fucked up. Ezekiel watched all of his men die. Like, a lot of them in front of him, and even saw one of them turn as he reached for their gun. And, like, as he was escaping a battle and almost got eaten by walkers, Shiva comes to his rescue and, like, just holds them off for as long as she can. And they end up tearing her apart. And he's, like, at Alexandria with Michonne, his lover, and he's, like, trying to be emotionally vulnerable with her. And he's like, I can't help but feel like I've led to the deaths of everyone that I have known and loved. And in response, she punches him in the fucking face and calls him a little bitch.
Yep. In many such cases.
Oh my fucking God. Anyways, after that, Negan destroys Alexandria. We discussed a little bit about this before. It was a lot, Doctor dies, Jesus pulls the grenade save, they leave, and they arrive to Hilltop just after Negan had besieged it with his walker-coated bullets and stuff. During this siege, which Dwight was present for, Rick is shot with a quote-unquote poisoned bolt. Just the same as everyone else who was, shot with walker-coated bullets. Everyone else turns, and Rick doesn't. And, they, after a while, they figure out, shit. Sure, he shot Rick, but Dwight really is on our side, which is such a great sentence. It feels like something out of a video game. When Negan is, like, about to storm side, Rick comes out, just can be, talks to Negan, cuts his throat, gets his leg broken, and fucking takes Negan in. This leads to a thing. I personally think that if The Walking Dead ended at war, it and like, you know, cut to the time jump with Carl as a middle-aged man, it would have been a very fantastic series. Uh, Now, there are two things they could have done with Negan if this was the case. They could have done what they already did and just taken him prisoner, or they could have done the thing that they should have done and executed him. What do you think?
Yeah, they should have executed him. It definitely does this whole thing where, like, Rick tries to do this nonsense thing that I really don't like with pacifist characters. There's only a handful of them that I actually like, and that's because some writers actually know what they're doing. Is that the whole, no, we try to be better than them, is like, no, the dude killed people. The dude had no problem putting other communities under his wing, forcing people to give them half their stuff just because, like, all he did was bully people around into doing what he wanted. Like, you're the same guy who had no problem biting into a dude's neck. You're the same guy who had no problem hacking a cannibal, hacking him to pieces and torturing him to death. Like,
Fuck, those are the justifiable examples, like, everyone could justify. Not to mention, like, when Rick cut off Jesse's hand.
yeah, like that's another one. Like, I don't know if Kirkland tried to do this like older than thou arc with Rick, but yeah, it doesn't fit. It does not fit with this character. It does not fit. Honestly, it doesn't even fit with the world that he established. Like, I'll go there, and I'll even say waste opportunity as well. I don't know if I mentioned this already, but like seeing Rick's like loss of humanity as the series goes on unequivocally could have been a really good subplot throughout the series if Kirkland seeded a few things a bit more and actually like plan things out a bit more. Because like we mentioned, it was like issue 58 or something like that, where he and Abraham and Carl had that heart to heart after the claimers, quote unquote. Like, that could have been used to establish and set up something later on and actually show Rick almost becoming worse than Shane, worse than the governor, worse than Negan in some aspects, and becoming damn near unrecognizable and almost being the villain of the series. And you can have that, maybe even have the final confrontation between him and Carl, which would be a neat idea. That him trying to create this perfect world or something, him trying to protect his family, ends up becoming a monster so unrecognizable that even his son rejects him. That's a neat idea. Like a darker inverse of the Road, if you know what I mean, like the father from the Road. Like he makes like such messed up decisions. But like, again, that's a hypothetical. That's just an idea that I have. And Kirkland didn't go with that, and we have, and what we have is meh.
If it ended at war, I think it would have worked fantastically in its own right, because throughout, you know, Alexandria and war, Rick was starting to come back from what he became in order to survive the apocalypse. He was bettering himself. He was trying to be the honorable cop that he once was, you know, be the man that Lori, Dale, fucking Tyrese, everyone would have, you know, loved to see him be and used to know him as once upon a time. And it, you know, just lock up Negan and leave him in jail for the rest of his life until he dies. It's effectively narratively the same as killing him, but it would be honorable and it would, you know, complete his redemption arc. And if it ended at war, it would have worked. Some people might not have liked it, you know, you and a few others, but it would have narratively and, you know, for his character made sense for what was being built up. And on the inverse, if he had just executed Negan, perhaps say through like some vote of the people, that could have also fit into his, you know, no mercy style of doing things, and also helped with his, you know, noble leader who does as the people want or need thing. But they kept Negan alive, and they kept the series rolling, and we get into the Whisper War and the Commonwealth stuff, which in my mind, kind of fucking blurred together. So I might use points interchangeably for these two.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah. So I'm going to get my likes out of the way first. Let's see here. The neo-medieval stuff was pretty cool. Like seeing Michonne become a pirate and, the knights on horses with swords. That stuff was pretty fucking cool.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Yeah, I think that's cool. Yeah. I actually liked some of the designs the characters had. I actually liked Michonne's design and the time skip. Like, I know you don't like Bob Ross Rick, but I actually like the look he has. It actually makes him like look a bit older, and it actually has this obviously shows the audience that time has passed.
Something about it also that I kind of noticed afterwards. This might just be, my political side going fucking apeshit AWOL paranoid, but when he wears like the button up with the slacks and the fur coats thing, he kind of just looks like some made up communist revolutionary.
Okay, I guess you could say that.
And also, I'm pretty sure at least once in the community, the Commonwealth arc, he calls Alexandria a commune. I swear I saw it on the first read.
I have to look again because I don't remember him saying it, but
I couldn't find it on the second read, but I swear to God I saw it on the first.
it's a commune. We're communists.
Ah!
Oh shit.
Anyways, on to the second thing that I like. Eugene getting a girl was pretty cool. The nerdy chick from, I believe it was the Commonwealth. The one that he repairs the train with.
Mm-hmm.
And the third thing that I like is the wall of heads. That was a pretty cool scene. Just displaying the infiltration and power that the Whisperers have.
Yeah.
On to the things that I dislike. Seeing Rick's killing bad characterization feels like character assassination. He forces it down Maggie's throat when she hangs Gregory for attempted murder of herself and treason, and he doesn't really follow it because he blows out Dwight's brains for his attempted assassination of the Commonwealth bitch.
Oops.
What?
Nothing. It's just it's like oops on Kirkland's part because like that is massively hypocritical. Killing bad unless I do it. Like, again, that ties into a point of waste opportunity. Rick being like a monster near the end would have been way more interesting because that fits with the character that was established. And it's quite, and like you said, the whole like redemption arc aspect I do like, but it's interesting, but it's clear it veered too far into that whole like redemption story, if that makes sense. Like where Rick is so altruistic, he acts like all like the last like 4, 5 years, 6 years, 7 years or whatever that of the apocalypse that happened didn't happen, basically. That none of
He
the bad
becomes
stuff.
altruistic to the point where it annoys everyone around him and the audience.
Mm-hmm.
In a way, it's kind of like it's the closest thing you could get to a post-apocalyptic SJW that is not Princess.
Yeah, it's kind of close to that, or at least ultra pacifist, if that makes sense. Because I know there's other characters like that.
Ultra pacifist until you try to kill him, and then he bites your throat out, which admittedly is justifiable.
Yeah.
Also, on the note, when Maggie hung Gregory for literally attempting to kill her and commit treason, and Rick chews her out for it. What the fuck, dude? What the fuck?
What the fuck, indeed.
The Whisperers are a cool concept that didn't feel as cool as they should. Also, Alpha has no charisma as a villain, and Beta's death was subpar. Alpha's thing with her daughter Lydia, it was a thing. It happened. It wasn't really that interesting. Also, Beta, for the villain that he was, being set up as, died like a bitch, and he also died like a bitch by the forced couple of Aaron and Jesus. So yeah, compounding things happened in these two arcs that I don't like. What did you think about the Whisperers and their villains?
Yeah, I kind of agree with you in that aspect where I like the concept. I don't think it was done well enough. Like the idea of people like moving from place to place, like slowly walking through hordes as they use like walker, like as they look and smell like walkers, so they don't have to like to deal with it. And again, like I do think it could have been fleshed out a little bit more. Definitely wasn't utilized as well as it could have. Negan's arc, I'm iffy on, especially now. Like, I kind of get what Kirkland's trying
It's
to.
not an arc; it's a scribbly line.
It's a scribbly line, yeah. Like, I get what Kirkland's trying to do, but
He wants to redeem the character without changing him in any way, which doesn't fucking work.
yeah. Like, there's I think a neat scene with him trying to stop a rape, and Alpha doesn't care because like the whole outlook on life is that what doesn't kill you makes you stronger, kind of. So, and that's where they clash ideology wise, and that kind of leads to like Negan making the decision to kill Alpha and bring her head back, and him trying to be in the good graces of Rick. Like, I do think that could have been better. I think that could have been honestly a little bit better, honestly.
Also, I wrote this before I realized that Sophia had some build-up as, you know, Carl's love interest. I said, Lydia was the weird goth GF Carl deserved, and the time skip took that away from him.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. The note I made on Negan's redemption arc, even though we just talked about it. Negan's redemption arc was half-baked and didn't go anywhere. It should have ended with him getting killed or actually bettering himself, because he kind of just loses his mind for a little bit and then builds a house and fucks off for the rest of the series. Canonically, he fucks off for the rest of the series because 30 years into the future, no one has seen him leave that house, even though they know he's still alive in there.
Yeah, like, I guess I'll give this to the show where at least they are actually doing something with Negan. Granted, I don't like him pairing up with Maggie, but that's an argument for another day. Did
they really pair up?
Not really. They're not a romantic couple, but they are partnering because they're getting their own thing. Dead City. If you haven't seen that, the trailer. Like, there's like 4 or 5 different spinoffs out getting made right now.
The only spinoff I was ever interested in was Fear the Walking Dead, and then I heard that was trash, and so I didn't get interested in it anymore.
Season 1's okay, season 2, and I ain't bothering with the rest of the show. Beyond is unironically the millennial writing show of the series. It's the 21, and you can just see with all the neon lighting and all that crap in the marketing. It only lasts like 2 seasons.
I saw it when I went to my local Menards. There's like one little thing that has movies and series on it, and Fear the Walking Dead was on it. And every other series on the shelf had like a couple taken off of it, but Beyond the Walking Dead was the only one that was like still fully stocked because no one wanted to take it because it looked like shit.
Yeah.
Gabriel in the Whisper War. His death was fucking stupid and unbefitting of a character of his standing. Do you remember how he dies?
No, I don't remember how he dies.
He's taking like a sniper's perch on like a water tower or something, and he sees like the Walker horde come by, and he like tries to go down the ladder, but his foot slips, and it as he like falls, his leg gets caught in between the bars and snaps, and he's like hanging upside down screaming for like fucking bloody mercy, and then Beta just guts him, walks along his way, the walkers go by and they eat his corpse. And that's what happens to Gabriel. Like, fuck me, man. You couldn't have a more meaningful death for a guy who's been with the group that long, and a guy who's been at like places and done things in the story. Like Alice, she didn't really do much, but she got like a more meaningful death because she got to save Heath's life while her own was draining away. And Gabriel doesn't get anything like that.
Right. Right.
So yeah, Whisper arc was just filled with a bunch of bad stuff that I didn't like. Also, on the Wall of Heads, there were a couple characters who got killed. You know, major characters, you sometimes just have to kill them in order to show the threat of a big bad guy. But I didn't like Ezekiel dying. I thought that he shouldn't have died there. I thought that him and maybe not Michonne, but someone who loves him should have gotten a happy ending.
Right.
Onto the Commonwealth arc, the last arc.
Yep.
First off, what do you think about the Commonwealth arc?
It has potential. If the writing was better, it has potential. Like the idea of this untouched zone, like militaristic dudes, they're all dressed up in body armor. I like that. That's cool. If done better, could, and honestly, if Kirkland wanted to, this could have extended the series even further, but again, cracks were severely showing. Kirkland was clearly getting close to burned out, and a lot of issues, and also, yeah, there are some very clear political undertones and overtones, rather, in the series, especially, and Princess's introduction, everyone's favorite new character. So yeah, there's a lot. There's that. Rick's death. There's that.
Yeah. First up, my note, word for word. I hate Princess. I don't care about her date with the Black Commonwealth Stormtrooper. She is the all too common in comics, lol so random, politically aware character.
Yeah, like, she does not fit at all in this. Like, at all. Like, I don't know what happened there, because, like, that is a 2016, 2014 character right there in this. Like, hands down. That was just full on, like, and I try not to use this phrase too much because it is overblown, but unironically, that, like, Princess is a SJW Marvel character. In every sense. In design, look, personality, characterization, everything. It screams that era of, let's change everything for the sake of it. And, like, it is just insulting, especially after when you had other characters in the series that are actually stand out. It's just, ugh.
She is terrible. I remember, I believe she says white privilege at least twice when she's introduced to, like, Eugene and co, who are going to where the radio told them to go, because there's a radio subplot in this show, or a fucking arc that could have been good.
I must have missed that, like,
because the radio led them to the Commonwealth.
White privilege, like, seriously? Damn thing's supposed to take place in at least an alternate reality 2010 at that point, because the apocalypse happened in 2003.
2003, and then it's 5 years in the future when, like, Commonwealth stuff happens. So that would be 2007. A 2007 going off of the sort of stagnated culture of 2003 America.
Yeah.
And they have a SJW using modern day fucking 2019 language.
It's crap like that will just rip you out of a narrative. It's crap like that rips you out of a narrative, which sucks because Kirkland's not that bad of a writer. Like, I don't know what happened. Read Invincible, guys.
It's the same the fucking Alexandria arc and the Summer Nomad arc. It's the same guy. How did he get this bad? Oh wait, it's because he became politically aware. And this leads to my longest bullet point on the 8-page list. The blatant political overtones of the Commonwealth segments are only there to let you know Kurtman cares about the issues. They don't add anything to the narrative, and in fact, take away from it. I can't find it now, but I swear to Christ I saw Rick refer to Hilltop or Alexandria as a commune once. The Commonwealth, for anyone with eyes and a brain behind them, is a blatant allegory for a man's poor understanding of capitalist society. Modern lefty political messages 5 years into a zombie apocalypse that takes place that started in 2003 is insulting. If there are any politics to be had, it should be wasteland politics like Dark Ages Europe or Fallout.
But even then, the policies in those actually make sense because they're like remnants, or even Metro, like they're remnants of actual political groups. And if you wanted to, and you can be clever with this, actually have like like them being remnants of like say different gangs or different groups or different political parties, that would make sense. Here it doesn't make sense. This isn't like a case where it's like in Metro where neo-Nazi groups end up hiding in one of the areas of the Metro and they end up getting guns and stuff like that. And that's why we have like Nazis like running around, like actual like neo-Nazis running around. Meanwhile, you have like Capitalist Hansa and the Communist Reds, like, and the Rangers have to deal with each and every solitary group. Or like Fallout, where you have the various groups in that universe, depending on which game you play. Those are just two good examples, honestly. But
yeah, those work because they fit into the world that's pre-established. It's not like the Commonwealth, which is literally just based off of what communists think a capital society works as. Because if you remember, the way the Commonwealth is structured is whatever job you had before the apocalypse is what you have during the apocalypse. And there is like no social upward mobility. There are just strict classes. And the people on top are better, and the people on the bottom are, fucking slave class. Which Kirkland literally just fucking made feudal society, but claims it's fucking modern society.
that's not how that works.
What?
That's not how that works. That's what I said in response to Kirkland's clear lack of understanding, which, like I kind of said earlier, like, Commonwealth could legit be a interesting place. It legit could have been interesting, but how it's done is not good. And if it was just like a remnant of the government or something like that, like we have with like that one group in the show, that's apparently like the big build up that they're building off to. I don't really care. I haven't watched Walking Dead in years. But if it's something like that, like this agency or this just splinter group of like a government or a piece of a different government or something like that, that could be interesting. That could be well done. Something like a combination of like, I don't know, Metro or Fallout in the Walking Dead universe. Like there's this even bigger world that our characters didn't even know and are just discovering. That could be cool, but that's not what this is, which is a real shame too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and of course the white family with blonde hair on top have a personal butler in the form of a black guy who does all their bidding. I wonder what that's supposed to be insinuating about the fucking cut-in replacement for what is supposed to be modern society in Kirkman's eyes.
Yeah.
On to like the second to last bullet point on the main arcs thing. If you're going to kill a long-running main character, I don't care how real world no care about your feelings your story is. You give a more dignified death. You don't have him get fucking killed by Sebastian, the little fuck. I hate this so much.
Yeah.
Why did they do this?
Yeah, I'm like, part of me when I first read that, I was like, I don't know how to feel about that. Like, okay, you're killing off the main character, and I read it again, and I'm like, no, this is not good at all. This does not fit. Like, Rick doesn't die in the show. It was kind of a fake out. He ends up getting carried away in a helicopter. I had to remind myself that I had to rewatch the whole thing, because I was dead certain that was his death episode, but it wasn't. But like,
they really wanted to make you think that.
They really wanted to make you think that. But there, he at least did something. You know? He at least did something cool. And if that was his death episode, honestly, that was a way better death than what they have here. At least he stopped a horde from coming and screwing up everything else. At least he, like, his actions amounted to something rather than him just getting killed by Sebastian of all people.
In his fucking bed.
In his bed, like that just
it's not even his bed, it's his hotel bed.
Yeah, it's like that just feels like a
So disrespectful.
Like that feels like Arthur C. Clarke. That just felt like it feels like one of those like stories, you know, those older ones, like either something like Arthur C. Clarke or shoot, what's the author who wrote The Road?
Cormac McCarthy.
Cormac McCarthy. It feels like one of those stories where the main character would die in an unsatisfying way. Albeit in Cormac McCarthy's case, it's different because his stories are always meant to be grim. But, like, you know how older stories will have the character die in an unsatisfying way. They'll just get killed in a hotel, or they get killed by some random mugging. Like, that's just a weird thing that happened in, like, the 70s. That's what it felt like. That's what it
I
felt
kind of think they were just. I kind of think it was them trying to make it feel like you were peering into the life of a real person, because unfortunately that's just how some people in the real world die. But also, unfortunately, that's not very interesting in a story.
Yeah, just to quote Jeremy Johns, like, oh, well, that's a lot more interesting. Well, fuck that shit. No one wants that. No one wants that. Have them go out in a blaze of glory. Have them fight a horde or something like that. Have them take out as many walkers as possible, and then have them
Just
die. Something cool.
Just something I came up with off the top of my head. Imagine like there's a group of bandits that harass him on his way back to Alexandria. They get in his way. He's already dealt with a lot of shit, and he kind of just throws his pacifist ways to the side and says fuck it, and starts opening fire on them. And while he's doing that, you know, walkers come and try to tip over the fucking trolley or whatever that's carrying Carl and co. And so, realizing that his decision to revert back to his base desire of murder has put his people in danger, he does his best to send the trolley on his way and dies to the horde in the process. That would be a lot more meaningful.
Yeah, it would be.
But nah, he just gets shot in his bed. And then, I guess Carl threatens Sebastian in his cell.
Yay.
Yeah. And on to my last bullet point of this section about the arcs and what we think about them. The flash forward is okay, but unearned. The series should have ended with the war.
Yeah. Like, I think I do kind of stand on my point. Carl could have worked. If the series was still good and Kirkland wasn't burned out, obviously, Carl being the main protagonist to an extent could work, and seeing him grow, and then we see Old Man Carl, that can actually feel like it's earned. We need more characters. We see the world get expanded some more. That could work, but it's just 30 years in the future. It's the Wild Wild West all over again. We see a few older characters.
Perhaps it could have worked like every other issue. It's like 2 or so years time skip, and it's just him on a random adventure helping people and stuff.
Yeah.
And then that just leads up to him at the farmhouse.
Yeah. I mean, it is cool seeing Carl like read the story to his daughter, though. That I like.
Yeah. And now on to the section where we talk about the decline and where we think it happened. I think you can already guess where I think the decline happened.
Yeah.
Where do you think it happened?
Yeah, you obviously think it's after war. I think it's kind of a myriad of things. Like, no story... well, that's not true. A lot of stories are perfect. But, like, no story is flawless in every single solitary aspect. There's gonna... Especially a long-running series like this. Especially written by, like, one dude. So, like, the cracks were gonna show. There's obvious exceptions to the rule. Neil Gaiman's Sandman, and Frank Miller's Daredevil, Garth Ennis's Punisher, etc., etc. But, like...
Berserk.
I try my best not to mention Berserk on this channel too much because like everyone's talking about it.
Berserk.
Vinland Saga.
Guts lost his hand too. He's gonna pull a Rick Grimes and bite the dude's throat out.
Unironically, he'd probably do that. If we're talking Black Swordsman...
He's probably done that already.
Yeah, Black Swordsman era, more than likely. But, like... It's down to what you have in mind and what you think the series can actually turn into. Like, obviously, Berserk is a different series. It's not a zombie series that focuses on a group of characters trying to, like, deal with the world trying to survive. Walking Dead, its major criticism of its storylines repeating do hold some water, even though the prison arc is definitely different from the war arc, which is definitely different from the Whisper War and the Commonwealth. On the outlook, they do have a similar formula, but they are very different from each other. But the issues with Walking Dead definitely starts mostly with a few cracks in prison arc, a few character deaths that don't make sense, some decisions that are iffy writing wise that you look back on, they're like, oh, that's a waste opportunity. There are waste opportunities. There are decisions that could have been made better. Then you go from subsequent arcs afterwards, like a lot of good stuff. There's a few cracks, and those cracks started to form more and more. Granted, Walking Dead's case, it was arguably slower than Saga's, because Saga's was like under like 50 so issues. That's when like damn near like at issue 40 or so, that's when like issues with that started to pop up. And then you see the mess that it is right now with Walking Dead. Like, you still have like a solid like 100 or so issues. And like the war arc, which I do like, my issues with it is just that it goes on too long. It's just, it needed to be 4 issues, like 4 or 5 issues shorter. That would have made it stronger, because typically like storylines aren't 12 issues long. Like, sure, you can have like different, the like compile story arc that are compiled of other mini arcs, that happens. But generally speaking, in comics, storylines which should mostly last up to at least 4 to at least 8 issues max. And 8 is a massive stretch. Not that many storylines last up to 8 issues. But after war, that is when there was a massive decline in quality. Concepts were not utilized to their full potential. Kirkland was clearly getting burned out by the series. And I think, and I had this written down, that like, I know Kirkland's a massive Romero fan, but my issue, and this is a personal thing, but I will say this, that Romero undead walkers are not as interesting as infected runners or different variants. Where I try not to mention Last of Us too much, but we've already mentioned it here. Last of Us is interesting. Those zombies, the infected in that, are interesting. There are different types. It's based on cordyceps, which is a real thing, real world. So there is a kind of a real world horror to it, knowing that this isn't just a made up thing. And there are different stages. First stage is runner, second stage is clicker, and there are subsequent stages afterward, up to a bloater, or even like getting attached to a like growing on the wall, spores come around, and if you inhale the spores you get infected, that type of stuff. And you have stuff like Left 4 Dead, which also has different variants. With Walking Dead, however, you can't do anything with the different like zombies in that world, because they're all just one type, an undead walking corpse basically, as opposed to something that you can actually do something with. Like, I've only read a little bit of I Am a Hero, and I might try to finish that when I can, but hearing that it's actually a hive mind, that's interesting. Here, yeah, and I think that does play a role into Walking Dead. That's why, generally speaking, all the villains are obviously human. They're dealing with human threats, because Kirkland can't evolve the walkers in any way, because that's what he's stuck with. So,
Well, that's just because he doesn't have the mind of the show.
yeah.
If you're already dog shit, why not dig deeper? Just make the walkers climb.
Yeah, like, the variant walkers I think are kind of silly, and I think the massive retcon in what was it, Alexandria, all the walkers
Atlanta.
My God, I do this I did it again. In Atlanta, retconning all the walkers in that place to be variants, I thought was very stupid. It's just, I really don't like that crap where writers feel, retcon something. No, this was actually this the whole time. It's like, no, don't do that. You're not helping yourself, you're actually hurting yourself in some aspects. But yeah, like that's a general big issue that I think Walking Dead has. I don't think that many people bring up, is how Kirkland kind of screwed himself with the zombie type that he picked, and that he doesn't lend itself to too much. Granted, the Whisperers I do think are the most you can get out of that, but even then, those aren't utilized as well as they could have. But
I don't feel like it's very limited. It's just how you used it, and well,
I mean, like, when you die, you become a walker if you didn't sustain a brain injury. They all are just walking corpse that just that eat human flesh. That's about it. They're mostly threats in hordes because if you deal with one, it's not a threat unless you're a moron, which that's usually the case in the show sometimes. But like as opposed to 28 or Last of Us, where one of them can mess you up. You know what I mean? Where one of them's a threat.
I'm not really that kind of guy. I don't feel like walkers are inadequate. I feel like it's enough.
Yeah, I'm willing to admit it's kind of a me thing, is a very subjective thing. Like, it is kind of a funny argument to have, like, oh, which is better, an infected or an undead? Which is better, a runner or a walker? Like, those conversations are fun to have, even though here, to me, kind of displays the issues with the an undead type. Like, and it's cool, the earlier stuff. Like, it's cool, like, all the stuff up to the war arc. Like, Kirkland's clear love of George Romero stuff. Like, he wears that on his sleeve. Like we mentioned before, the black and white actually adds to it. To what was it? Night of the Living Dead, the original film. That came out in 1966. Like, how that film was black and white actually adds to it. Adds to the grit of it. I actually like the style. The paneling's really spot on. The comic, I don't like to say the word wordy, but like, I don't mind it that much. The dialogue I think is good. I do think Kirkland's dialogue is good, minus Negan's overuse of swearing and the governor's overuse of swearing. Like, it's still very strong. There's a lot of good, like, simple lines that are really well done. And it's not that Kirkland's a bad writer, it's just I think he definitely got burned out over this series, which I don't blame him. The political stuff we already talked about. Like, compare it to like another series, I think like Invincible might be his best one, his strongest one, especially since that wait, that lasted up to longer. Let me check, because I know for a fact that series went longer. I've read Invincible, but I haven't read it in a good while.
I haven't read Invincible, and it doesn't really seem to interest me. It's a bit too wacky for me.
I want to say it's actually pretty dark. It's good. It's actually good, but like, it is like adjacent, like a superhero like stuff though. Like, the whole thing with that is that you don't have your Superman write your own. You know what I mean? And I genuinely like it, and I do look forward to the next season. But yeah, go ahead.
I like Omni-Man. I like Invincible. I like Cecil. That kind of stuff is pretty cool. But stuff like super buff alien men and universes where it's like they age 1,000 years for every day on Earth. That stuff's just a bit out there for me. Also, Angstrom Levi. That's a very big weird thing for me. It's subjective. Like you with your zombie types. It's just me with some stuff I just can't get into when it comes to superhero stuff.
Okay. 144 issues. Oh, that's weird. I'm dead certain this lasted longer. Weird. But whatever. Like, Invincible lasted a good while. So that's just an example. And also, like, what was it? Outcast. That's also a good series that I like. That didn't last too long though. I mean, it was like only a couple dozen issues or so. But that was actually pretty good. So, and the dude's working on television. The dude's like, he like co-wrote the screenplay to Renfield, I think. So the dude's clearly working on other stuff. So it's definitely like around war. Like, his desire to continue Walking Dead definitely ran its course at a point.
The Whispers to me feel like an idea that he came up with along sometime during war, around like when he still had some enthusiasm. He's like, hey, that'd be pretty cool to do. And by the time he got around to doing it, he was probably already burned out.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's not just something you come up with when you're burned out. You don't come up with something as interesting as people wearing the skin of the dead and walking among herds when you're like, oh, just get this the fuck over already.
Mhm.
Anyways, the ending. What do you think?
I think it's good. It's what's leading up to it, I think, is the issue. Like, it was quite clear that was based off of probably an old script that Kirkland wrote. Clearly. He clearly had the ending in mind. Old Man Carl. It's quite clear he may have had notes of it or a older script of it lying around. But the big issue with it is leading up to it, and because of that, like, Rick's death, and Carl has to kill his walker, and next issue is Old Man Carl. We get that time jump. So when you go through the series like that, it just smacks you in the face. It doesn't feel earned in a way. It doesn't feel like we would let up to that moment.
That's what I was saying.
Yeah, I know.
Anyways, what do you think could have changed for the better? Like anything from less melodrama to character doesn't die here.
A lot of stuff. I do think, like, there are some aspects that the show did better. Judith could have lived, Carol should have lived, and actually could have been a predominant member of the cast. Tyrese could have played a massive role that you said. I like that idea.
Billy could have been a character.
Yeah, Billy could have been the character. Yeah. I do think Negan should have died, and Rick should have been the villain in a way, and you could have led that up to Carl being the main character and have him go on a few adventures here and there, and have the years go by and have him be an adult, and then you lead up to Old Man Carl if you wanted to, but even then, it's like, how far can you stretch that? Commonwealth could have been handled better. Whispers could have been handled better. Like, yeah, there are some aspects that could have been handled better in general, and writing wise, though, like, a few things need to definitely get beefed up. Some characters could have been better here and there. Like, there's a lot of stuff you can actually point to and actually say that could improve it a tad, but
Looking over in my mind all the instances where a character cheats on another character, I'm convinced that Kirkman has some form of NTR fetish where he's the guy NTRing the husband.
yeah, either that or he really likes his telenovelas. He really liked if you know what those are, like his soap operas. You know what I mean? One person cheats on one person's the cousin of another person, one person's related to another person. It's, yeah. But then again, he's trying to cue up drama. You need to make a thing interesting somehow. Even when the characters aren't killing a walker, when they're not having sex, you got to do something.
I don't know. Who's the best girl?
No idea. I would have said Michonne at some point, but that's my show. That's the show fan in me, not the comic fan in me, to be honest. Like, comic fan in me.
I probably ruined you with talking about how she's a homewrecker and loves ruining relationships.
Yeah.
Punching Ezekiel.
Yeah. So yeah, that's Walking Dead. Like, kind of a mixed bag, to be honest. Great series at the beginning, especially near the middle, but just peters out, though. That's kind of the issue with writing in general. But if you like good zombie media and you're interested in the comic, definitely give it a read. But after war, it's best to stop. So yeah, take care. Thanks, Marshall, for showing up in this video. Stay tuned, Wanderers.